Welcome to Technology Brothers, the most profitable podcast in the world. Jordan and I just got back from Hereticon in Miami. We want to do an overview, a deep dive. When did you actually get into Miami?
Got in Monday, got back yesterday.
Pretty short.
There was apparently the World Series happened.
Yeah.
And, there was 100,000 people on the streets outside of the studio today.
Yeah.
And not even they could stop us from recording today.
Nothing can
There's
stop
just too
us.
much to talk about.
It was like a crazy time for stuff happening, and I was completely disconnected from it. Like
Totally.
I didn't see anything about the World Series.
I didn't know the World Series.
And did you see what happened in the stock market while we were there? Like everything ripped. Bitcoin went above 70K.
Yeah.
And then as soon as Hereticon was over, everything crashed.
Yeah.
Classic.
Makes sense.
It was like the vibes. We were just like summoning all the capital allocators together in Miami, partying away from their
when
terminals.
people just get offline, like good things happen.
No one can sell.
All
the biggest hitters were there, and they were all drinking and partying, so they couldn't sell.
Yeah.
So the market just ripped. And then they got back, and they were hungover, and they were like, actually, I need to hedge.
hedge.
Worse. What was your favorite like moment? Or did you come away like with any like interesting takes? The main thing for me was that at the first Hereticon that there was some alien stuff, and I didn't really buy it. I'm buddies with Jesse Michaels, who's like the main aliens guy, and he hosted a talk with this guy Carl Nell, who I think is going to be like really, really big soon, like Joe Rogan soon, and it materially updated my like expected value of aliens being real. Yeah. Now I probably went from like 3% to 10%, but it was good. Mostly just because the guy that Jesse brought, this guy Carl Nell, he's not like the strung out hippie burner guy being like, oh yeah, I saw some stuff. And it's like, okay, you were probably on drugs when that happened. He's like straight up, they test for in the government, like in his world, they test even for like ibuprofen, because it's like you have the button, you have your finger on the button, like the nuclear button. So like they need to know everything. So these people aren't on drugs. And then he puts things in terms that I think tech people and skeptics like me can understand and actually open things up. Cause like the classic like tech person defense of like aliens aren't real is just like, well, we're listening, we have the SETI project, and it's quiet, like there's no one's broadcasting, and we're broadcasting, right? But his point is that actually the SETI program does not broadcast. We assume that we would broadcast because we broadcast television, like I Love Lucy. Once we got to like the 50s, I think we started broadcasting with these really high powered satellites or these dishes. They go out and they should be findable in deep space, and so you would assume that aliens really far away, they got I Love Lucy a million years ago, and we should be able to get this. But his point is that we have actually, humans on Earth have stopped broadcasting because we switched to using fiber and satellites.
Brothers.
Seriously,
that's the perfect show to send up.
Yeah. We should broadcast.
We should do that,
even though everyone gets it over the internet, which is fiber and Starlink and satellite internet, and the satellites.
But I want to send it into deep space.
Yeah,
that'd be so traumatizing.
we need
like,
propaganda.
Aliens are listening. They're like, what about the timeline?
Yeah. So he was good at like bridging from like the dark forest and then providing a bunch of evidence. And so Jesse's like very convinced now, and I think it's good. And he's also like super straight edge now, so that makes me believe it more.
Yeah, that. I feel like we were trying to be cognizant of that with our talk of like dressing nicely.
Yes.
Our anybody that wasn't there, our talk was on the case for performance drug use in Silicon Valley, and so doing any type of talk about drugs, we wanted to make sure that we like looked presentable. And I think we did. I think we were probably the best dressed people that day.
I mean, the whole thesis was like we need to go back to the Mad Men era of the 1950s, where there were an intense amount of nootropics consumed. Alcohol was drank at work.
One way to put
Caffeine was drank at work. They were smoking, using nicotine constantly in the office. And now we've turned like all of technology has turned into like, oh, like you need like some stack. It's a nootropic. It's like, no, it's just a drug, and it's cool to use it at work. Yeah.
You basically want to short the companies where the founder is like even thinking about what their stack is versus the founder that's just like flow state ingesting. But yeah, I guess two things that stood out that were interesting. The talk that most stood out to me was, I mean, there was a lot. I wouldn't say it was the one that stood out the most, but it was the one that that I think would be interesting to listeners. So Brian Johnson gave his like "Don't Die" speech and talk. I think the thing for me was realizing that he puts so much content out there about like his basically his like penis,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's like the perfect like lead
viral
thing.
Yeah.
But there is an extreme level of depth to extreme
Freudian
level
slip.
Extreme level of depth to what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot more interesting than just the surface level like billionaire spending money on his health. One thing that I think the audience reaction that was interesting, I think like 50% of people were like, this is super cool, I'm going to download the app. 50% of people were, this is a death cult, like of the the 21st century. This guy, every single person that's ever had a death cult was like this sort of like charismatic figure who's promising we're on the precipice of something very significant, which in this case is AI, and you need to figure out how to live forever, and we're all going to live forever together. And his example from the talk was that he said something to the tune of like, what I took away is like basically he's creating an algorithm that tells you exactly what to do all day long. And his big pitch to the audience was like, would you use the algorithm? And some people were like, well, what if I want to like, I'm hanging out with my friends and having fun, and the algorithm says go to sleep. He's like, would you do that? And he was really just like sort of trying to find this
you willing to do that?
Cultural ground. And then the other thing that was funny is wearing a Make America Great Again hat was like the most non-contrarian thing you could do.
I was thinking about this.
I shouldn't give a blanket statement, but it felt like most of the most normie people there were wearing the Make America Great Again hats, and Delian was not. And Delian's the guy who like 3 years ago was getting horriciously
more than
like
that. That was
like
it was like 6 years ago.
6 years ago,
he got canceled on Twitter.
Horrifically canceled.
Just
like,
as like
there was probably
he didn't even endorse Trump at the time. It was like a performance art piece just to see what would happen in San Francisco, and there was a big backlash. In fact, the most heretical talk that I heard on politics was the case for Kamala Harris, which is very interesting, and it was presented in this kind of trollish way. But there actually was in that talk like very serious criticism and very like a deeper level of analysis around the flaws of Donald Trump than I'd seen elsewhere, certainly in like the media, which I think was cool.
And the most triggered I saw anybody was maybe Max Myers after the D-Cell talk, where this guy was basically saying, and he was just like basically rattled.
We do have to respect Chatham House rules to some degree, but
another favorite moment, like David Senra would show up, and then like every 2 hours he'd be like, all right, I gotta go home, like edit the podcast. And I like never knew if he was just like, this is getting like too crazy, or he actually just had to get home and edit the podcast.
I think he just likes hang out with a small group of people. And when you have like 500 people packed in a place, he's just like, what's the point?
The real Hereticon was on the 14th floor.
I mean, that's how it always is. I mean, last time I met Will, which is the reason I met you, was because of Hereticon, and it was all just because we just sat at a dinner table together.
Will is who introduced us. That's so funny.
Will introduced us, and I met him at Hereticon, and he was telling me like, oh yeah, I quit smoking with Lucy, and afterwards we were just like, we were like got along really well, and we just had a really good time, and got put in a couple like group chats together and stuff, and then it just kind of like continued from there. The rest is history. But there's always like that type of connection is like much more valuable in general. I mean, all the talks, it's so odd because of the vibe shift. There's not that much stuff that it's like, oh, if this were to leak, like it would be career ending for them. Like most people have kind of sorted into organizations. It's not like they're like middle manager at some like tech company that is actually going to like have HR and compliance be like, hey, you can't be out there. Most of the people that are attending are like either running their own company or aligned with venture capital firms that would support them, or like they have a big following on X.
The interesting thing was there wasn't that many people that had to put in like a PTO request to be there, is what I would say. There was a handful of people that had to put in a PTO request and were on like a vacation in Miami. But then most of the people were just like, that was work.
Oh,
that was like some of the most
100%.
productive. That was some of the most productive days ever. And we were very much working.
100% working.
The entire time.
But yes, because of the vibe shift, like there aren't that many things that are like, oh, this person like said something that like if it got out, it'd be really bad. It's more just like there's somebody putting something out there and they're laying out a little bit more of a rigorous case for aliens or something like that, and it's on you as the viewer to just kind of say like, okay, I'm getting another ball is being thrown at me.
Day
Like,
one.
am I going to swing at this one? Like, do I believe this a little bit more, a little bit less? And so the ideas are like not controversial in like the you can't say them realm as much as controversial in the sense of like 50% of the audience is like, I'm not really into this or whatever. You made the case for like Brian's thing is like, it's somewhat authoritarian. Like there's a lot of libertarians. Like that is kind of like a debate point for people, even if it's like he could talk about it publicly and it's fine because it's not that controversial to talk about. It's just like, it's an idea that not everyone is down. And that's why it was split 50-50. And that's like the ideal scenarios you go into every talk and people come away. Like even at our talk, there were multiple people that came up with after us and were like, no, psychedelics are great. And our pitch was like, no, psychedelics are terrible. It's just like, I think that's kind of like what heretical meant this time around, as opposed to last time. It was very much just the only place in the world that you could go at that moment and say whatever you wanted because Elon didn't own Twitter yet, and there was still like massive like cancel
it's
culture
interesting
and stuff.
how, I mean, if it was the most unique event that I've ever been to, and truly, an amazing product. Thinking of it as like a product of like, and it, you know. But it's interesting. Like, would it ever have existed if Twitter wasn't where we all were having conversations, but couldn't say the things that we wanted to say?
And COVID. I mean, I know Mike was planning it before COVID hit, but once COVID got really bad, that really like amplified it and made it like it was the first conference that 90% of attendees had been to since the lockdown started. And because it was just like everything was canceled. And Hereticon still got pushed a few times the first time, but then eventually happened, and it was like this big celebration of like okay, and the vaccines had actually dropped, so it wasn't that dangerous for people who were down with that. And so it was a little easier, but still companies weren't like all of the big tech conferences were still virtual.
One of the things that was cool and maybe under discussed to date is that there was this really good combination of intellectuals and people that were focused on theory and people that are technologists, business leaders, investors that are much more pragmatic. And so I went to the talk on terraforming and ended up talking with the guy that hosted it afterward. And I was like, cool. You know, his high level point was there's these depressions around Earth which are below sea level, so if you just get water to them, you can make these huge lakes or seas or whatever. And I went to him and I was like, okay, cool, what's the next step? And he's like, I don't know, like I just sort of like talk about this, like terraforming is like my thing, so I just talk about it. I'm not the guy to actually go and do it. So I very quickly like came up with a strategy for one of those depressions, which we can talk about off air.
Okay, cool.
Which was basically like to buy up a ton of land around that specific area for nothing because it's worthless right now, and then go spend like 10 times more money lobbying to get water to that place. And there's like a really interesting arbitrage where like you could turn like $100 million into billions of dollars of value just through this like weird mechanic. So we're gonna keep talking and like see if there's
cool.
There.
The water rights thing is fascinating. I mean, it goes back to like Chinatown, like fascinating movie, like how LA wound up with water rights. But I remember there was a politician who was saying like we like all of Nevada, New Mexico, and Arizona could have like way more water if there was actually like a technological solution, which is nuclear powered desalination in California. So you have the ocean, unlimited water. Nuclear, unlimited energy. You put those two together. Desalination's really energy intensive, so it doesn't make economic sense now. But if you can do that, then you can reroute the Colorado River back to like kind of where it should be, basically. And then all of a sudden the Southwest becomes not like a desert anymore, and it just becomes like lovely because there's just water everywhere. And there's just like so many other little plans like that. Obviously, they take a long time, but like with the right combination of like technology, lobbying, economic incentives, and like academic type influencers.
You did come away from it feeling like the biggest plays in the world right now from a business standpoint combine technology with lobbying.
It's interesting.
Because like the biggest opportunities in SaaS, like even AI is like lobbying driven right now.
Also just the fact that like a lot of these are like there's at least one idea there, and you kind of got to hunt for it that like will become consensus. Like this is the whole idea of like contrarianism, which is kind of hereticon, just like a synonym. Is that like the attendees for this one will just be like the entrepreneurs for the next like 2 decades, and everyone will be like, oh, like, why is that guy here? His thing's not contrarian anymore. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're not just gonna stop working on it. Like last Hereticon, I gave a talk on nicotine is good for you, right? And this year, like, I was like, I'm not just gonna run that back because like everyone knows about that. Like that's like super normie at this point. And same with like the Anduril guys. Like if they were just set up there like, we should build a defense company. Like it's like, okay, dude, we get it. But at the same time, you don't want the Anduril guys being like, oh, I'm moving on to the next hot thing because I just care about doing contrarian stuff. It's like, it's okay that they've gotten that they did the contrarian thing. They took the bet. They were correct. But now they have to go live that life for basically ever. And that's good. And that's the way it should be. But it lends itself to this like, give me a newer hot take. And it's like, okay, like you can. I'm sure they have good ideas, but it's not always going to be as big as like the one thing that becomes the life's work, right?
The contrarian thing from this event that will become mainstream is goo.
Goo.
Fio's goo.
Is that
it was Volta?
Like, John Fio from the Fiorentini family.
Yeah, Fiorentino family.
They made their money in hospitality, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about his like prolific hiking regimen. 6 to 14ers.
But basically a lot of people were starting to skip the coffee, the espresso, and go for the goo.
A lot of people.
And there would be people running around really wired 3-4 a.m. off the goo, and you could just see this crazy look in there. It was almost like a divine spark in their eyes.
Is it the collagen, the colostrum, the caffeine?
Yeah, we don't know what it is. It's just
the
like
combination,
the sacred combination. And he talks about something that was interesting is like there's no difference between invention or discovery, and so it's this thing of like, did he create goo or did he invent goo? Did he discover it? Are they all the same thing? But by next Hereticon, well, I think we'll have figured that out.
Interesting. I'm bummed that Packy couldn't make it. But did you see his tweet?
Was he having a child? How on earth did he not
I
make
think
it?
so. Something like that. But he said, I sadly didn't make it to Hereticon, so here's my talk. We should flip these lines. And it's the amount of venture capital investment year over year, and then the amount of charitable giving, and the charitable giving line is much higher than the venture capital
line. So that by itself is like, we probably shouldn't even talk about it because it should just be a talk at Hereticon that just becomes like a normie like thing that if it ends up being world positive.
I mean, that's the fascinating thing about all of the like climate funds. Not even the climate VC funds didn't do that well. There was a big, I think it was Kleiner Perkins had a big push. They had a fund that was what was the term back in the day?
That almost like destroyed their brand for like a decade.
It was tough. I mean, Al Gore became a partner there. Isn't that crazy? He's like hanging out there. But I forget what it was called. There was some term for this, like green investing or something like that was like really popular. But Tesla was not considered in that category.
And if you bundle Tesla
then the returns go great. Yeah, exactly. And so it's like there's almost like this misclassification of like the thing that solves the problem might not even look like it's in that category. Just like, if you were like starting like, okay, we're an internet infrastructure fund. Like, do you get into the seed round of SpaceX? No. But you should, because Starlink's the best asset.
I do think that VCs that are not there, that are feeling FOMO, should probably feel an order of magnitude more FOMO. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, when the event was very expensive. But I guarantee you it will result in a massive return for Founders Fund and the other VCs that were there, right? It's like there's people there. I wish the missed opportunity was getting a photo of the entire group.
Oh, yeah.
Because it would have just looked like it's the most eclectic group ever. Like a lot of like kind of strange, a strange mix of people. And you could look at that picture 30 years from now and be like, this guy like annexed Cuba. And then, like this guy like
I liked
this guy did a hostile takeover of SpaceX.
I liked Palmer's tweet. What was that? What did Palmer say? He said, Hereticon was so good, banger after banger, hit after hit, as if all the best threads on 4chan came to life, with a level of mutual respect and discourse lifted from the best stereotypes of the Victorian Explorers Club.
No, it was there was a conversation that was being had, and Senra kept saying like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And they were all like 4chan slang.
Yeah.
And he was just like, what? Like, what's going on right now?
Senra's so delightfly offline with his like book
and
reading.
That's why Founders is what it is. Is because
he does the reading for you.
He's not. Well, yeah, he's focused on things that were written mostly in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so much alpha in the podcast. Yeah. If he was extremely online, like refreshing the timeline, like the podcast would not be who he is.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a cool thing. Like everybody there is like authentically themselves.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like most people weren't there. The only time that I got offended was a guy like trying to be heretical, not actually being.
Yeah.
And it was for like a very like political topic that we don't need to talk about because we don't talk about politics on this podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody was there being them authentically themselves, and the combination of all of that just made it amazing.
Yeah. I liked Gabby's tweet. Overheard at Hereticon, the real nootropic is being on a mission.
I'm kind of mad she didn't credit me for that.
Did you say this?
That was my line.
That was your line?
Yeah.
Wait, did you say that in our talk or just randomly?
No, during the talk.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah, it was at the end. I think we were honestly talking about a certain presidential candidate who clearly does all the wrong things, like crazy schedule, overworked, Diet Coke, McDonald's, like eating terribly. And the argument there was that there's the most powerful drug on the earth is the human spirit and being on a mission.
Makes sense. Yeah. I liked Daniel. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Tenriro.
Is he at Teal Capital?
He worked at Teal Capital for a while, but now he's independent. I hold my own private version of Hereticon every day on the inside of my brain.
That's like really awesome. That's like really true, because I think it is a place where you can say the things that like that's
it's
kind
just
of
like
the point
schizo
of it
energy.
Yeah, you're just like saying things that aren't normally said.
Yeah, but there was like I didn't really go on Twitter during the conference, but there was a little bit of like pushback. Like Rune tweeted, like, when people go from SF to Hereticon Miami, the average IQ of both cities go up, which is this like copy pasta of this like incredible tweet by product manager Raul.
Yeah.
But it's just like oddly written.
Well, it's funny. I saw another tweet that was like, "Come on, sweetie, it's time for your quarterly beef with Founders Fund."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay."
Well, I mean, yeah, Rune's like a prolific hater, but I think you should put your journalist hat on for a minute, like you're a traditional tech journalist, and just like follow the money. Think about it. Like Rune works at OpenAI.
Yep.
Peter co-founded OpenAI. He's invested in OpenAI. Like, he needs an enemy. He needs someone to beef, because you don't want to be at the top. You don't want to have no enemies. Exactly. That's the worst. You need someone taking you down.
Yeah. If we didn't have if we weren't fighting against the working class.
Yeah. Exactly.
There would be no podcast.
Yeah. And I mean, a similar thing happened with Sequoia. Like, Sequoia was like, the untouchable firm, no enemies. And then Sean McGuire, decided to wage a holy war against Islam. And so now they have an enemy, and now they're not just this like untouchable brand. It's David and Goliath all over again, which is the ideal scenario. You always want to be the underdog. And so even if you have to pay someone to talk trash about you, it's totally worth it. That's the summary.
Absolutely. Thanks for the clicks, Rune. I do think it's funny because our talk was closer to a comedy sketch than a real talk. And I realized that like midway through, where we would say a line, and if we didn't get a laugh, it's like gotta rework that.
Yeah.
But that somebody came away from that not realizing that it was like a more of a comedic sketch than anything else.
Yeah.
And they were probably like, these guys are fucking crazy. It's awesome.
This is the craziest talk I've heard.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of it was like, comedy shrouding around like a true idea, or like teasing a true idea, but just like amplifying things to like help it stick in people's mind and become like memes. And then our boy Theo got destroyed by some IV or something. He said the cost of admission to Hereticon was expensive this year, but it was worth it because he became a blood boy, which of course is another joke. There were no real blood boys there, unfortunately, but
not in any of the rooms you were in.
No, not in the rooms. Anything else to talk about Hereticon?
I'm sure it'll come up later.
Yeah. What should we move on to next? I think it's time to tell you about today's highlight Sotheby's. Since 1744, Sotheby's has been the premier destination for art connoisseurs, collectors, and enthusiasts alike, offering an unparalleled platform for buying and selling fine art, jewelry, rare books, and collectibles. From classic masterpieces to contemporary works, Sotheby's brings together world-class expertise and global reach, connecting treasures with those who truly appreciate them. So whether you're looking to acquire a timeless piece or explore the vibrant world of modern art, Sotheby's is where extraordinary finds a home. Tell a story about a piece of fine art. I really like this Peter Paul Rubens, David and Goliath. Have you seen this?
No.
It's currently kept at the Norton Simon. Hopefully it'll be at Sotheby's in a few years.
Right.
You can pick it up.
Yeah.
But it's iconic because like Rubens was like, he really explored like the human form and like musculature. Like it's a very like, it's this like jacked David like about to behead Goliath. It's a very, very aggressive piece.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because like when I first heard the story of David Goliath, you think about David as this like tiny little underling and Goliath as this like massive
kind of like you and
thing. Me. but in this painting, David is actually like very powerful and jacked, and like yes, he's smaller, but he's still like put in the work. And I think that there's actually like a good metaphor there where it's like you can't just be like, oh, I'm some startup and I'm going against the big company and they're huge and I'm small, therefore it's a David and Goliath situation. I'm going to win with by throwing the stone. It's like, no, David clearly like put in the work, at least in this telling.
Put in the work.
And I like that.
And that's another thing with Sotheby's. They're not afraid to put in the work. They, in addition to the art that they have listed and some of the private catalog, you can go to them and get their help, finding specific works that, that you feel something about.
You recently had luck here, right?
Yeah, so we were looking for basically a lost copy of The Wealth of Nations. We have a copy there just, for sentimental value.
And for daily reference.
So the Technology Brothers, collector division was looking for a copy that, a lot of people thought was, completely lost. Sotheby's was able to help us get it. Took about 3 weeks, but basically no lift on our side, and it's now safely in the vault.
Yeah, it's kind of like the holy grail of capitalism,
right?
In some ways.
Yeah,
you just go
which is the primary
and absorb the energy.
Yeah, the primary inspiration for this podcast.
Exactly.
So, anyways, thank you to Sotheby's.
Should we move on to some tweets, or should we do Brother of the Week?
We can just jump into the Brother.
The Brother of the Week.
Gonna have to go to the mansion section.
Yeah. So in the Wall Street Journal today, in the mansion section, there's someone that we have to highlight. So his name. Where is his name?
Famed LA.
George Ruan, R-U-A-N. Is that Ron? So this is the co-founder of Honey, sold the company to PayPal for $4 billion. And he essentially got a free $44 million house,
Amazing.
Which has now been profiled. It's 16,000 square feet, 9 bedrooms in Los Angeles. The coupon king buys again. So how he got this house for $44 million, effectively for free. This is real. Like so in 2020, he paid $60 million for a 21,000 square foot house in Bel Air. And then just 2 years later, when the market was ripping, he top ticks it and puts it on the market for $150 million, almost 3 times the price. And he actually gets the deal done, sells it for $112.
Yep.
So that's a $52 million gain, pays a little tax maybe.
Yep.
Gets the $44 million house for free.
Rolls it in. Yeah, I think
this is
the real story from this is that if you're a founder out there building something like a Chrome extension, which everybody says, Chrome extension, this is silly, this is not a real business. If this guy had never built a Chrome extension, he never would have gotten a free $44 million house. So don't ever let anybody tell you that your idea is small or not worth doing. That brings up, I saw that Grammarly is at like basically 300 million of ARR.
Wow.
Do you see this?
No. That's awesome.
Yeah, so Chrome extensions.
Yeah.
If you're at the Hereticon that didn't happen in 2012, it would have been all about Chrome extensions.
Probably. Something weird about that. I mean, it
feels fake.
Yeah, the Honey and the Grammarly, those companies like people love to say, oh, AI is going to like destroy this, or like there's going to be some new thing that's like it's not going to work. But people seriously underrate this, is like a Nikita Beer point, but people seriously underrate like just like good management and good and a well-run company being valuable, even in like a little bit of an odd industry that might feel a little fragile. And so I think the Duolingo stock hasn't fallen at all, even though everyone's like, oh, of course you just learn how to speak a different language by talking to ChatGPT. And it's like, maybe
part of it's just a distribution thing. Like I actually am much more bullish on Duolingo than Grammarly, when Grammarly feels like, okay, you're built on top of this browser that actively wants to roll out features that differentiate it from all these other browsers.
But who knows? I mean, maybe Google gets it wrong, and there's just like it's never properly rolled out. But congratulations to this week's Brother of the Week. Let's move on.
We almost should get something in here that's like
Employee of the Month, Brother of the Week,
handwritten line
image. There is a good tweet in here that I want to pull up, but we should just go through them in like somewhat reverse order, I guess, since we have a whole stack here. So let's start with this one by Andreas Larson. He just posted a meme. I bet he saw it somewhere else. But this is I know I follow this account on Instagram, QS. I forget what it is. It's like Quant Strategies or something.
Oh, really?
It's some meme page. It's good. What people think ESG is: we must save the planet. Invest in my fund. Here's my money. What ESG actually is: I have created a synthetic securitization so that BlackRock can buy mezzanine tranches of forests in Zimbabwe nobody planned to cut, and large mining groups can declare themselves carbon neutral while using child labor. Great riff on ESG.
Yeah. If that's what ESG is, what is DEI? Just kidding. We don't talk about politics here.
I mean, actually, there's a great like economic analysis of the problems with ESG from Aswath Damodaran, this finance professor at NYU, and he kind of laid out the bear case for ESG and just how it was like kind of misaligned. It had been abused by capitalists. But the question is, like, now with this, since it's making everyone so much money, are the capitalists going to come around and like, should we be supporting ESG?
Yeah.
We should be like, actually, ESG is amazing.
Yeah, ESG.
I feel like it never worked its way into startups. But I feel like there was never really.
Can you imagine if term sheets were getting issued with like ESG baggage attached to them? Like if somehow,
or vice versa,
the funds had
some sort of ESG kicker where if it became a meme, like, everyone knows that you can attach like .ai to your B2B SaaS company and double your valuation.
Right.
That never really happened in ESG, just because I think the money that was actually flowing was mostly in the public markets from these funds that like needed to flow and through the ESG scores and stuff, and it was heavily gamed.
But couldn't you imagine if big LPs had gotten pressure from various groups and were like telling the VCs that they invest in, hey, if you can get your companies to follow these principles and track it, like that's a very dystopian sort of like thing to imagine. But what if they were like, well, we'll give you 25% carry if you can get on any deals that have ESG attached to it. It's scary that it's not that difficult to imagine that actually being the case. And then there would have been this whole dynamic of like, oh, don't work with this fund because like they're going to force you to like follow like ESG.
At the same time, like, how hard is it if you're like doing some B2B SaaS company to be like, yeah, we're carbon neutral?
But like the whole gundo is like being like, we're putting up solar panels. Like we have to spend like at the office because like
baggage,
like what's his name? Isaiah from Valor is like being like, like we're working on this nuclear thing, but like we have to put up solar panels
in the meantime.
In the meantime.
Or no, even worse, just like we have to spend like 10% of our fundraise on like carbon credits.
You know the thing that actually, going back to Hereticon, I didn't talk to her, but do you remember that girl like 4 years ago who was going viral for making nuclear energy cool?
Oh yeah, Isodope.
She was
at the last one,
She was at this one too. I didn't get a chance to talk to her, but it was so funny. That's like a perfect example of something that was contrarian.
Totally.
Like
she was on stage at the first one.
Less than 4 years ago.
Yeah. And now there's like a whole
so
suite
normie.
Of
there was a bunch of nuclear energy founders there.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was cool. Like
next week I'm going to like MC a whole like nuclear conference, and it's like the least heretical thing. It's all like government people and like companies and VCs and like there's whole funds around this and stuff.
So
it's like,
she wasn't giving a talk because
she
like
didn't need to. She accomplished her mission. And she can just kind of like move on.
Yeah. And that's why we're oriented around capitalism, which is the only. So if capitalism stopped being a thing, we would have nothing to talk about, and we would retire the show and commit Seppuku. So anyways,
that's great. Let's move on to the next one. Rico's Revenge says, being broke at the book fair as a kid turned me into a monster.
Yeah.
Why was this personal for you?
I just remember that. Like,
yeah,
I just
it was one
remember
of the first.
I just remember the book fairs and like honestly. So the topic of Halloween, this is cool. Mm-hmm. So Halloween, every single year, my entire childhood, as early as I can remember, I would go regular trick or treating, and then my parents would say, "Pick your 20 favorite pieces of candy. You can keep those, and the rest of them we're gonna take and give away in exchange for you going to be able to buy a new book." So my parents were very into the library, so we rarely bought books, but that would be the moment where I would buy like a fresh, brand new book, and it was just like the best thing in the world. So thank you to my parents for doing that. But I do remember being at like the book fair, and to be honest, like with our kids now, you can imagine a book fair is happening. You'd be like, yeah, like go, like
just
ball
buy
out.
everything,
like buy whatever you want, because like parents are just willing to spend money on like
course.
education, but it just wasn't a part of my like family.
And there's also
like,
that meme
anytime
that
money is just so emotional, right? And so like you have these sort of like intense blood memories around money, and this tweet brought back that. Like,
there was also that like meme or like study that like the like educational achievement in children is correlated with like the number of books in a house. Growing up, which is clearly just correlated with like wealth and like a million other things.
Interest in learning.
But then people kind of took that and kind of flipped the correlation around. They were like, oh, if I just buy a bunch of books, then my kid will do well, which is also probably true. But it's just like it became
because
like,
you're absorbing. Just like why would we spend 7 figures on the wealth of nations?
Yes,
and it's because we want to absorb that
energy.
energy.
Yeah, you want to have that
even if you're not going to read it. You want to be able to absorb it.
I actually have read the Wealth of Nations.
It's a classic. It's a classic. If it's one of those things like
it's so dry.
If you could only have 3 books, it would be the Bible, Wealth of Nations, and then the book that Justin Mares will eventually write on health.
Okay.
Just to support the boys.
Yeah, of course,
right?
Of course. It is a fascinating read in that you're watching someone work through the discovery of capitalism essentially. And that's fascinating. But most of the actual takeaways you can get much more concisely from just like an Econ 101 textbook. But it is very cool. Okay, so let's talk about the Arc browser situation. There was actually someone from Arc there at the party. There's a company called the Arc Browser Company. They've raised a fair amount of money, over $100 million. Is that right?
I thought it was 150.
Yeah, they've raised a lot of money, and they have a very hipster kind of aesthetic. They post these high production value videos updating the community on what they're building. And they've built a new browser, so it's a replacement for Chrome or Safari, and they've applied a number of different design elements to that. So pin tabs, vertical sidebar, spaces. And they recently announced that they're essentially pivoting, launching a new product. They're going to leave their existing Arc browser in kind of maintenance mode. So they're not going to like piss off their existing community, and then they're going to launch some new things. Sound like a lot of stuff is going to be AI based. And they're trying to like get through that transition of being like, okay, we're going to pivot to AI, but let's not make it like too dramatic. And so Astral Wave Andrick writes, I don't fully buy the reason that pin tabs, vertical sidebar, and spaces are too complicated for normies. We live in a world where even mainstream browsers, Safari and Edge, have sidebar tabs, collections, synced tabs, pin tabs. Heck, Chrome has had pin tabs since a decade ago. I use pin tabs in Chrome. It's fine. I think the reason Arc feels complicated, honestly, is that they're a bit too focused on that circa 2010s hipster aesthetic and gaudy visual design that gets in the way of usability. Do you buy this? Do you think this is a good take?
Generally, I'm extremely pro Arc and the browser company because I'm not an investor, but I'm generally like in favor of people taking on these sort of like commoditized products and categories and saying like, let's try to reinvent it. I think what they ultimately found is that the browser is like pretty well optimized, and the other thing is that it's really difficult to compete with platform companies that are trillion-dollar companies that are giving away the product for free
and they can pre-installing it.
It's pre-installing it, so they have the distribution. Google doesn't care if Chrome loses money forever, right? They'll spend billions of dollars on it. Apple, on the other hand, like needs to have like an installed browser, and they don't care how much it costs to run, and they're pretty good products. I think like them trying to solve, they basically were trying to solve like the tabs issue. Like everybody has too many tabs open. And for me, I actually, this sounds, it's going to sound bad, but I never installed Arc because I got fatigue around these sort of like new note-taking type things where I'm just like, no, like Chrome's pretty good. Yeah. I even think Safari's pretty good. Yep. I alternate between the two on my phone. Yep. It's just like, I don't really think about it. But I think like the thing that's more real here is that they got really interested in AI, as everybody did, realized that there's much more ability to create like a viral consumer product with hundreds of millions or hopefully billions of users doing that. And they are really well suited to like go try to tackle that problem. Now, the hard thing is that they're like a really big company now, which like most VCs, you know, I would say like contrarian VCs would say like companies over 10 people can't innovate or whatever. And like, do they need this like really massive team? But I think the issue that they ran into is they create a product that a small group of people really, really love. And they're in this position where they really should kill the product probably or like spin it out. But then it puts them in a position where they say like, well, why are we worth $500 million if we don't have a product yet or we don't have a live product? And so I think it would have been cool if they like spun it out and made it open source and like let the community keep building on it or something like that. But yeah, now they're kind of in this weird position, but I'm super excited for their like the product coming up. Devin gave me like a little bit of a preview cool. on what it is. It's going to be awesome. They like clearly build great products. Now it's finding that like they raise money like with the understanding that they needed to build something with like 100 million plus users. Otherwise they weren't going to like live up to the expectations that they set. Yeah.
It's tough to sell a browser.
No, I'm just saying,
not a lot of hyperscalers need one. They all have one.
Yeah, right? No, I'm just saying give it away to the community. Like
that might be better.
Yeah. Or just like spin it out as in like, hey, we're not, because now the thing is like they're gonna have this like competing thing where their power users that love the brand are gonna be like, why aren't you maintaining this? Or like, why aren't you adding to it? And like there's like I don't know, some amount of entropy that is going to happen naturally when like the whole team is focused on the new thing. And then like, it's like one designer and like a few engineers that are running a browser. And the tough thing is like,
to be on that team.
Yeah. The tough thing is this is coming off them having like a pretty big security vulnerability from like a month ago that like they got a lot of heat for. But I think what this comes down to is if you do a lot of things really well and you have a lot of attention, and you're relevant to a lot of people, which a browser is, everybody has an opinion. A lot of people like see like a really well produced video and are just like, I want to like hate on this. Right. And sense. So anyways, I'm rooting for the browser company. I'm rooting for Arc, and I guess I'm not rooting for Arc anymore because I don't, you know,
this doesn't,
Arc,
they don't even want to take it anywhere.
Arc's going to Arc.
I do wonder about what was like a design focus, like the right go-to-market for this. Like the other browser that's done, I think, reasonably well is Brave. Yeah. But Brave is focused on like these crypto micropayments, and they have this whole like economic model that you could be very like, oh, it's just a crypto Ponzi thing, but like at least like if it works, there will be some sort of like incentivization there. It's kind of like the creator payouts for X, where you're, you know, ostensibly like paying to use the browser, and then when you visit a website, if they're on your team, they get paid for every time you visit, and then they have an incentive to actually put up a banner like, hey, stop reading my website in Chrome, you should read my website in Brave because I'll get paid for that. And so you have some sort of distribution like economy. Whereas if it's just like really cool, it can be cool and people can say, oh, what's that? Oh, that looks really nice. Like it can kind of go viral, but it's just word of mouth, and that's really, really hard to scale into like the normie. Crossing the chasm is going to be really, really difficult. Anyway, let's move on to Nicole Wiskoff. Wiskoff Ventures founder shuts down company that never really got off the ground. Emails investors, you are welcome to invest in whatever I build next on a $100 million post-money safe. Sometimes I hate it here. She got almost 1,000 likes on that. The biggest problem is 100 mils too low, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know she seems to back really great companies, so knowing the kind of caliber that she looks for, I don't think it would be absurd to pay 100 million post for whatever they do next. I think I just want more details, to be honest. Like, I'd love to see, like, did he send the like filled out safe? Like, was it already signed on his side and he's just like, here's wire instructions, like countersign?
I mean, a lot of founders try and mog investors when things are going well.
Yeah.
It takes a special breed of founder to try and mog investors when things are going poorly.
Yeah. It's funny. I talked to a founder recently that had like 2 very high profile failures in like a very specific category. And he was going back for a 3rd company in the same category. And I didn't ultimately get there on investing, just from like nothing to do with him or the category, just like talked with some people that I knew. And they said like, but just the fact that he was like back to back, these sort of like big, basically blow ups, and was like, yeah, I'm going back again. Like, just like, you want to support that guy, right? Like,
I mean, under discussed, Parker Conrad, Rippling is his 3rd company, not his 2nd company. And the first one was a little bit adjacent. It was I think it was like a fintech company, but it was still like kind of in that same realm. It was something for like charts and visualizations for like financial stuff. And that
SaaS
company,
guy.
He left, and it actually is still going on. Like, it's still alive. It's not like a phenomenal company, but like, yeah. And it's just like, I talked to a big investor in the firm, or in Rippling, and was just like, he can't, like, I don't know if he could build anything outside of this, but he's just like destined to do this.
That'd be a weird thing, like working at the first company, watching
the third
company, and you're just like your company hasn't, your shares haven't been marked up in like 3 years, and you just see Rippling with like the $12 billion valuation, and you're just like,
yeah, damn it. Well, I mean, a lot of people moved over and some people didn't, and that was like a big
the
moment.
Real hero's journey is that he buys back the first company, right?
Yeah.
And like merges it into Rippling, because Rippling is the last SaaS you ever need.
There's been a couple examples of that. I don't want to like say it because I don't think the deal's done, but there's like a big YC founder who had a company that blew up, and the early team is like going to go back and buy the IP and like, use it for something else, which I think is really, really cool. I think there's something about like owning your child or your baby, and like just like keeping working at it and having another shot on goal. If it's like an interesting name or an interesting .com, or like it'll have some
Partyround.com
sort of like cachet. I mean, we got to talk about getting Party Round. Once Chamath is head of the SEC, you should just be able to text anyone in America, do you want to buy shares in my company? We got to get rid of all the what is it, accredited investor laws.
Dude,
we got to get rid of those.
I didn't even think about, like, Sachs gets a role, obviously. He's like, well, I gotta support the boys.
The besties.
Gets Chamath, SEC.
Yeah.
And then it's just like a new American renaissance.
JCal press secretary.
Let's go.
Incredible.
Let's go. He's like
so good.
The White House verticalizes podcast, has podcasts. We got to break out like
the DOP, the Department of Podcasting.
It's if JCal was running the White House media strategy, it would be heavily monetized.
Yeah.
That would be like,
it's like Secretary of State.
It's kind of like a dream scenario. Like, imagine like, White House press secretaries up there, and they're doing podcast ad reads in between the announcements for like obviously big multinational companies. Like,
why not just the bond issuances? Like, the government sells debt, so it's like, hey, did you know the 30-year is at 4%? You want to buy some? Like, brought to you by T-bills.
T-bills.
I mean, they used to do that. Like during the war, there's like posters and essentially advertisements for government bonds. Now it's all distributed through like the banks, and it's very abstract. But it used to be very much like going direct to like the American average American citizen. Exactly. Yeah. Because you just wanted everyone to chip in and buy war bonds.
Yep.
It's great. But yeah, that's probably the future of Party Round. It's specifically those political texts. So you know how you get those texts from politicians like every 2 hours on your phone now, and you can't opt out of them?
I don't know why.
You don't get any?
I don't get any text.
Is that just because you've never voted?
No, no, I have. I've been trying to figure it out.
Or is it because you're so extreme politically that they're just like,
we can't turn this guy. It's a waste of money.
Yeah, there's no anarchy candidate on the ballot.
No, I don't. I haven't got a political text.
Wow.
But I have made efforts to like go and like you can do those like blanket opt out of like
remove
my info from this that.
Yeah. But that's where we need to get with like, fundraising. It just needs to be like, okay, I'm hiring a firm to spam my roll-up vehicle to 10 million Americans.
Yeah.
Send out the vibe reel that went viral on Twitter.
Yeah.
Let everyone know I'm building AI for dogs. Let's get some money in there. General solicitation. This is the future.
Yeah.
There's a couple companies that have like kind of figured out how to do that. I've seen some Instagram ads for like crowdfunding efforts, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
this is where we're
friends, my friends run the biggest agency for advertising crowdfunds in the world.
Yeah.
Shout out John.
The Jobs
Act.
Act.
Yeah.
The Jobs Act.
Yeah, and it's like it's an amazing like thing. Sort of like example of capitalism where companies figured out if you spend $1 on Facebook, you can drive $10 of investment. So why would you not just do that?
Yep.
It's like an infinite money glitch, basically.
I mean, it's the ratio of cost to capital raise is probably right in line with like big investment banks.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
If you take a company public, you're probably paying some massive fee.
But you're giving an opportunity for everyday Americans to, earn real yield and real alpha.
Exactly.
With the next great robotics company or whatever.
Let's move on to Apple. Do you have Apple Intelligence on your phone yet? It's like almost here, right? You can install it if you go to the beta, but you don't have it?
I don't have it yet.
I don't have it yet either. I used to install the betas, and they're always like kind of sketchy, so I just wait.
Yeah.
But Schmidt writes, my mom, that hike almost killed me. Apple's AI summary. Attempted suicide, but recovered and hiked in Redlands and Palm Springs. Has 14 million views. I predicted that this was going to happen on a podcast with
And
Lulu.
didn't you also say you think a lot of these are?
I think a lot of these are fake, and I think a lot of these are photoshopped. I don't know that this one is, but obviously we know LLMs hallucinate and they get things wrong and they're rough. But that is Apple. That is not Apple's.
Yeah, that was a good take.
That is not Apple's brand. Like I was talking to a really, really big filmmaker in Hollywood, and he was predicting that Apple TV would not be successful. He works with like HBO and Netflix and stuff, and it is specifically because Apple's brand is perfection. Everything needs to look perfect, and so that's not Hollywood. Hollywood is almost more like venture capital, where there's going to be some dogs, even the best, and you can't have everything be guaranteed because it's art, not engineering. And so the AI thing has been really, really difficult for Apple, in my opinion, because they're 2 years behind ChatGPT. Like the day ChatGPT came out, they should have ripped out Siri and had an LLM replace it in terms of just like what consumers would want. At one point, I actually had a macro on my phone where instead of saying, hey Siri, I could say like, hey ChatGPT, and it would like take a shortcut and route it into ChatGPT. It was slow. It didn't really work, but that's essentially what they're doing now, but they're still going to have problems. And maybe that's why they did the OpenAI partnership, just because like if they have some really bad hallucinations, and they need to like respond, they can be like, oh, this is a partner. We switch partners. They're the scapegoat. Like we can move on to something else. Hey, we revamped it. I think the right frame of mind when you're interacting with like an LLM is that like it is a little sloppy, and as long as everyone goes into
it's like a human.
Yeah, it's a human assistant that might get something wrong, or just like when you're online and you're scrolling like a feed, you kind of know that like there's going to be slop, there's going to be jokes, there's going to be fake news, and so you just kind of go into that, and you're not rattled.
The issue is, unlike an executive assistant, you can't berate. Like you can't berate Apple Intelligence, right? Like if your EA makes a mistake, you can get on the phone and scream at them for like 20 minutes and then hang up.
EA? What's an EA?
Executive.
Is that like
assistant.
a secretary?
Yeah, it's like a secretary.
Okay.
You can't call up Apple Intelligence. Yeah. You know it's going to be a robocall, and berating an AI like voice bot is not going to feel the same.
Maybe that would be a good instead of an AI girlfriend, it's just like an AI that you can practice berating, so that you get better at just like really giving. Yeah,
because those moments don't come up that much.
They don't. But when you're ready, you need to be able to scream at someone. Like if you're raising your second company. If you're raising for your second company after everything failed, you're gonna have to get on the phone with all your VCs and tell them that they don't know anything.
Yeah, like look at like Jeremy Gaffon, right? He was here. We got to spend some quality time with him over the last few days, and very, very calm guy. But he's from the world of finance. Like he goes to tech conferences, but it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Like he's clearly, and the classic, behavior in finance is that if something bad happens, you like scream and yell.
Yeah.
The funny thing is I can't imagine Jeremy yelling at somebody like intensely, but I know he's going to have to do it.
He needs to get practice reps in.
And so he needs to get his reps in. So
if
I was an indie hacker right now, I'd be creating like a prosumer, like beration, if that's a word, practice application.
It gives you a score at the end. Like how intimidated was the AI?
Yeah. I don't think you're going to get a million
Did
users,
you go too far, or were you dialed in perfectly?
Yeah.
Because you don't just want to be like,
it'd be
a
funny
string
if
of
like
racial
HR,
epithets.
like it had a feature where like HR joins the call.
Yeah,
like, hey, dial it back. Dial it back.
Okay, dial it back. But you got your point across. But yeah, I think it'll be good. I think Apple will eventually dial it in. I mean, the tech is just so good at this point. It's like really easy, and they have a bunch of interesting ways to integrate with all the data in your phone. So you'll just be able to talk to Siri more, and it's so overdue because Siri's been so bad. Like Siri, I only used to ask it the weather, maybe set timers.
This feature's silly. Yeah. Like I would turn it off if I had it because like text should be short. Yeah, I shouldn't.
Well, I think it's valuable in the sense that like. The real use is that the AI should be able. So right now, if you want to get rid of this political text, you can go into your iMessage and say, but it's all hard coded. So you can say, if I don't have the number saved, put it in a different folder, like a junk folder. But then you miss 2-factor codes, you miss like things from doctors and stuff.
Yeah, well, the issue I'm talking
more
about.
I could actually go to the AI and say, like, if it's a political text, just throw it in a different folder.
Sorting's cool. Yeah. Summarization is not cool.
Sure.
If Nancy Pelosi texts me and the Reddit stock's going up and she says, go long soy, go long,
that's
all
the
these other things. But then if the AI
throw
hallucinates,
some stock tips in. But politicians, if you're going to text me every single day, throw a stock tip in.
There you go.
Throw a stock tip in, and then I'll be like, well, yeah, okay. So you told me to go into
your Polymarket coupon code.
You told me that you're going to make oil great again, and you're going to drill, baby, drill. And so you told me to buy Exxon. I doubled my money. Sure, I'll give you a 10% cut, politicians.
That should be how politicians raise money.
Exactly. They should give a stock tip and then monetize it by saying, hey, if it works out,
give me my cut.
Grease some wheels.
Yeah.
Come on.
That is how you drive American politics.
Everyone would be
forward.
like, I can't wait for the next text.
The senators and various politicians would be focused on seeking alpha.
Yeah, hedge funds would be setting up, how can we get the text first? We don't want to be late.
The issue is hedge funds are going and paying off politicians.
They're going direct to the stock tips. They're getting their text over Signal.
Yeah.
And we're just stuck with the SMSs.
Yeah.
Plebs.
Anyways, that's a play there. There's a play there.
You see Vivek Ramaswamy, he's now the second largest shareholder in BuzzFeed, and he posted a vlog of him.
A friend of mine's back BuzzFeed.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Great guy.
So he posted a vlog of him going to BuzzFeed headquarters, and so George here summarized it. He said, "This is so ruthless. Vivek got on his plane and went in flip-flops and shorts, flew to California, went into the BuzzFeed headquarters and handed them a list of conservatives to hire," which is kind of a funny thing to do. They had no choice but to listen because he's one of their new owners. He's now their second largest outside shareholder. Maybe he'll buy the whole thing and turn it into a non-woke organization. This is how we win the culture war. So I can completely disagree with that. I don't think anti-woke BuzzFeed is
I do think
that
the thing that's interesting about that is that Bezos was in the news this last week for saying, like, one, obviously the Washington Post not endorsing a presidential candidate.
Yep.
Two, being like, you need to hire some conservatives. When I see these things, I'm like, why? Like, we need to have media companies, like, sort of, we'll never do this, but other media companies should have to label, are we hyper politicized or are we a news source? Right? Because like when I'm seeing that it's just like, I don't know, it just feels like newspapers have this, legacy newspapers have this like sort of, permanent label of being able to be arbiters of truth, right? And so, but if they're hyper politicized, and like the truth is going to get kind of lost in that. So anyways.
I was looking at the New York Times endorsements. Since 1960, they have endorsed every single Democratic presidential nominee. Kennedy, Johnson, Humphrey, George McGovern, Jimmy Carter, Walter Mondale, Michael Dukakis, Bill Clinton. It's just like, you got to
respect the conviction.
I mean, at least like where they stand, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's just odd that like you would never be like, hey, actually we switched around this time. We're mixing it up.
Do we need to put journalists in our enemies bucket, or that would be too political?
I don't know. Maybe.
I like journalists.
Yeah.
I like them far away.
Depends. Some of them are great. Some of them I'm sure are good people. But But this Vivek thing is interesting because not because of what he's doing with BuzzFeed. I mean, I hope it works out. I hope he makes a ton of money, but it's because did you actually watch the vlog of him going and doing this? That was interesting because I have this theory that like Andrew Yang was the first presidential nominee to go on Rogan. Bernie Sanders went on, Tulsi Gabbard went on. And so there were like the fringe candidates that were polling very low had to go on Rogan in 2016 in that cycle. And then in this cycle, all the major party candidates are doing these huge podcasts. Meanwhile, the more like fringe candidates, like, I mean, Vivek's like not running right now, but he's clearly going to like gear up for more politics stuff in the future. And I think having a candidate that does like vlogs and direct video and actually like owns their own media and puts stuff out, I think that will be the future.
It's actually insane that
they don't. No one owns their own media.
Trump doesn't blog.
No,
like he's putting out like.
And Kamala puts out these little short.
Like
videos.
I want like UFC. Have you ever seen UFC Embedded, which is like the week prior to a fight? They vlog all the fighters, and it's the most engaging content.
That will 100% be the future.
And you can make it narrative driven, so it's very easy for a political candidate to make it look like so much momentum building in the campaign. Like make politics is like more about likability than policy.
100%. like with the whole RFK endorsing Trump thing
is like this parasite. This is what Senra always talks about, the value of podcasting if you're in business is like he's developed like a real friendship. It's a one-way friendship with millions of people. Right. And so if I'm shocked that a high profile political candidate hasn't used the vlog format or even having their own podcast.
Or their own podcast, like with the RFK Trump endorsement, like they both got on stage at a rally and both, gave their talking points and gave independent speeches. I think that would honestly do better if it was like the Donald Trump podcast, RFK is the guest, and they're just having a conversation about health. And so you're just in the room with them, watching them have a conversation. Or it's like JD and someone who, knows about like, industrialization. And JD's like, look, I don't know if this guy's going to be in the cabinet, but he's a buddy. And we're going to have a conversation about how we actually like revitalize the Rust Belt, like something that he cares about a lot. Instead of him having to go to Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan being, or Kamala going to,
and it's a way to stay active. Like, over the last couple of weeks, I think people have been like really hyper fixating on what did this candidate do today. And the thing with the podcast is like we can record. I mean, for us, we publish live effectively, like within a couple hours of recording. But other candidates could save up a bank of content and put it out when they like wake up and they're feeling a little tired and they don't want to hit the campaign trail.
Exactly.
I don't tip politicians, or I don't donate to politicians. Hit the campaign trail.
The campaign trail. Should we do this one? Mike Dudas says, Pump.fun is the fastest company in tech in history to $100 million in revenue. I feel like there's a new company that claims this like every day.
Well, so the cool thing with this company is you can look on chain and verify it,
that's happening.
It's like actual like dollars in the wallet.
Because
and
it's
so the reason
like,
that
give me the overview. Like, what is Pump.fun? It's like Solana meme coins, right?
So basically, historically, people would make meme coins and they'd have to combine all these different things, and they were actually writing code.
Yeah, they were always like ERC20, like forking projects and stuff.
So this is. Yeah, it was
like
basically
a SaaS product,
this is like Shopify for creating a meme coin.
Okay,
basically.
got it.
That's the way to. It's Shopify for meme. It's Shopify for meme coins. It's basically Shopify for memes because it just allows anything happens and
there's
like,
a meme coin, like
it'll
the Joe
be like
Biden
the trash
token
coin or like So
or like there's one for like Mudang, the hippo or whatever.
And so the thing that's crazy about this is that one, they made it. They built the perfect product to enable crypto speculation. Because I think I haven't used it, but I think you can actually invest on the platform too. So it's like a two-sided marketplace, like Shopify. So you can create it, people can invest. It actually is good for consumers because it's like easy, like they like help. It's creating more standardized, sort of underlying structures.
Well, you're still likely you could still get rugged very easily if people just decide that this meme is not hot,
because the
but
coins
it's not getting hacked as much. Probably.
Yeah, less hacked.
Yeah,
there's like meme coins were historically extremely complicated.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if you're on a Shopify site, like the product might be bad, but you're not going to get your credit card information stolen.
Yeah.
Because the credit card information is with Shopify. Shopify is reliable. Now the product might be white labeled and like junk, but at least you know that like your credit card information didn't get leaked.
So what's interesting about this is what I think this could be a company where they end up returning billions of dollars to investors without any liquidity event or through like stock buybacks or something like that, or just distributions, because I don't know any company that could buy this because it's in such a
Coinbase or something, right?
Well, yeah, but it's in such a regulatory like gray area of like you're creating the government, like the SEC wants to say that these are securities, and like every crypto company has had to like fight back and like make their case that like this isn't a security. And so I just don't think you're going to see like Goldman Sachs like buy a company like this, like Pump.Fun. But they're making so much revenue.
Buy or underwrite? Like would they not even touch it from an underwriting perspective if they want to take the company public?
I don't know if this company could be public because it's got so much regulatory baggage, right? Maybe in a Trump administration it could go public because like he's launching like his own meme token, but yeah, I think this is one of those things like they might end up returning like billions of dollars to their VCs, and I don't think they raise that much money. I don't know how much they raise, but like I think it's like under $10 million, and
they're just doing really well,
and they could just distribute it out to VCs. Like Mike, and I'm sure it'll be a great return. But I think
you're distributing like tokens that are liquid.
This is such an amazing example of a product with like really good execution, but in hindsight it's like, why didn't this exist in 2020 or 2021? Like it's just like the most obvious thing, like Shopify for me.
It just seems like there weren't that many like actual builders, like the ratio of like scammers to builders.
Even before this product was created, like this probably increased the number of tokens by like an order of magnitude.
Yeah, totally.
And even before that there was like 100,000 per day, or something absurd, right? Because the cost to create them is low.
Fascinating.
I like how this guy got like his little fucking.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know who this guy is.
Yeah, that was.
But he's also in there, just like, wow, I love it. So Peter Levels, the indie hacker extraordinaire, says, "Where do I start with robotics? I want to code and build my own robots at home for fun with a potential for world domination." And Matt V says, "The raw volume of software engineers who have asked this exact question in the last 20 days is insane." So all software engineers are pivoting to robotics, apparently.
Yeah. I think what's interesting here is that there's going to be a bunch of like really, the thing about indie stuff is that it's oftentimes like could have been fundable but wasn't. Oftentimes it's just like unfundable, like it's just like weird, like some like clearly very small TAM. The thing that's interesting here is like it will be dependent on how cheap robotics get, which I think everybody thinks like the robots are going to continue to like get cheaper and cheaper. But like right now it's expensive. Like the robotics company I'm involved with, Deterrence, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, like we're going to need like millions of dollars worth of robots over time. So it's not like something you can just kind of like, I'm sort of like very for the trend, but sort of like wouldn't go super long on it just because of the part of the nature of like, I don't know. I think it could be like, it's probably like a decade plus.
There were a couple like kind of cheaper open source robotics platforms like
Arduino,
but you could also like get like a Roomba and like open like a hack it, and then you can just like have it draw
the death Roomba. That's a Roomba with a Glock attached to it. It's like just patrols your house.
And I know Boston Dynamics does sell the dog for like, I think it's under 10K. It's like around there, so it's somewhat doable.
A dog that brings us.
You can also rent those, but those are much more close source.
But if we had a dog that could go to the fridge and bring you a beer,
probably with the arm, it could. And then George Hotz has a. It's basically like two wheels and like a stick, and it's like the comma body, and then you can like write code for it to like do stuff, but it's very limited. It's just two wheels and it balances it's like a Segway basically. But yeah, I mean, it's always hard with that. It's like these should be at like every single hackathon, so like the next generation of like college hackers can like try a bunch of different stuff, even if it's like really junky.
Totally. my dad as a teacher ran this thing called Project Make, which was basically like woodshop meets robotics meets like aerospace and just like hacking. Yeah. And so he had at his school, he had this like warehouse that was just filled with like robots and Arduinos and Raspberry Pis. So I think that's kind of like starting to happen, you know, in high schools, which is very American. Yeah. Right. Innovation is American.
Yeah. It's always hard to tell like where the real value will be. Like even if it's like, okay, if Waymo had an open API, like what would you do with that? You know, it's like people really just want the one thing.
I'm excited to see more. Like I think like Nat Friedman tweeted out like I want like not a leaf blower, but like a little robot to like go and
somebody
like,
built it.
To like pick up the leaves, and like I'm so for that. Like leaf blowers, we should add it. Can we add this to the enemies list of like leaf blowers? Because like I've lived in places where like leaf blowers were just like, I'm like,
so constant.
This is insane. Like not only is it loud, but like you're blowing particles
like everywhere just
into my yard, and they're hitting my window. Like I'm going to go postal.
Well, this one's related. Yaxine writes, we really need more software engineers to enter fields that are very easy, like electrical engineering and mechatronics. We can bring so much fresh perspective with our relatively high degree of skill compared to them.
That's like
I love it.
Perfectly intellectual rage bait.
Yeah, so good. 3,000 likes, of course.
3,000 likes.
Banger.
That poor person probably had like 1,000 engineers in their DMs just being like, you are the world's biggest idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone who's an electrical engineer is like, come on, dude. But it's great rage bait. But yeah, I mean, I do think though that there should be more like intellectual flexibility between the disciplines, especially with like just how easy LLMs translating between different languages will be. So it's like, there's some sort of like little bit trickier, lower level language that you need to learn, but now you can just write Python code and the LLM can like transform it into whatever very quickly. So there's like a seed of like truth there, even though like it's a great bait post. Let's go to this Will tweet, absolute banger, 4K likes, less than a day ago. Did he really post this at 6:50 a.m. on Halloween? Was he up that late or that early? Maybe this is a East Coast West Coast thing. It might have been.
That's a good question. I don't know. Ben would have screenshotted it.
I think he just posts in the middle of the night. He just wakes up. Divine.
No, but it's very. Insight. I think I'm gonna guess that it was 9:52 in Miami.
Okay. So Will says the real measure of wealth is how many problems you can solve by calling one of your guys.
Yeah,
it's great.
Very real. This is
the phone CEO.
I think like Jeremy may have brought this up like at Senro's event, but yeah, like it's about everybody's like, oh, I have like my car guy. I have like a barber's like a form of a guy. You know, like a hair guy. I've got, as you get down, it's like, oh, I have like this stylist, or I have my watch guy, or I have
feng shui guy.
This, you know, specific type of lawyer, feng shui. I have a feng shui guy. And, you know, at Hereticon, the conversation is more like, who's your Antichrist guy, right? And
who's your aliens guy?
Who's your aliens guy? Who's your terraforming guy? If you need to terraform, who's your first call? Like a lot of people are going to come up blank on that. We're not.
There's also the shift from most people have like an app. And when you reach a level of wealth, you have a guy. Like instead of DoorDash, you have a personal chef. Instead of Uber, you have a personal driver. Instead of United Airlines app, you have a private plane pilot, or two of them, since you always have to have two flying.
Sorry, I had to make a note. I need to text back my feng shui guy.
Oh, you do? That's great. Feng shui is real. We'll do a deep dive on it soon. So there's news in TechCrunch that Dropbox is laying off 20% of its staff. And Packy McCormick writes, "You're laughing, but 1 out of every 17 Americans just lost their job," which is hilarious because he's thinking of DocuSign, not Dropbox. I'm sure Dropbox has a lot of employees, but it's nowhere
Dropbox
near
slander.
What
that's the most that's the most attention Dropbox has gotten.
Yeah, and it's so funny they got 8K likes and 1 million views because like it's wrong, but it's like kind of spiritually correct, and then it's like no one really knows. But Dropbox is definitely going through a change because Drew Houston is doing like videos and going direct. I've actually gotten this from a few people.
Or is he just working with Lulu?
No. Lulu has like straight up created like a zeitgeist shift, even in like public company tech CEOs. I've gotten texts from a few people.
So
here's
the thing. So Lulu was at Hereticon. We obviously got to spend some quality time. It's interesting because like she's done the public markets stuff, right?
She's currently on Shopify's board.
Okay, yeah, I didn't even know that. That's
and
cool.
she was like the the comms person on the Activision Blizzard
and
Microsoft deal.
Yeah, exactly.
But then she's also like launching like seed stage companies.
She's working with these like really hot seed stage companies, helping them do it. But like, is that a waste of time when she could turn a $20 billion company into a $21 billion company?
Like, imagine if she turns around Boeing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that would be crazy.
Yeah, and like
probably more value creation than like getting some seed stage company in Series A.
Yeah, that's like charity work.
It is. Yeah, that should be her pro bono work.
Yeah. She should be like, she should literally have her charity division.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Gabby, who's also Gabby Goldberg, whenever there. That's going to end up being like a crazy, I don't know if it's going to be a mafia or just like a generational firm if they keep creating this like orbit.
Totally.
Talent.
One of those like one of those firms that's like behind the scenes.
Yeah, and like, I guess like to go back to Will's tweet, like a guy is not necessarily a guy. Like it's spiritually like you know, a spiritual.
There's like a meme like call Lulu if there's a hit piece that's coming out or you have a comms crisis. Like there's really only one person, and if you have someone that can actually solve your problem, that's really valuable.
Yeah, and if you think about Hereticon, the highest percentage, like any like tech conference, the highest percentage of people that have been doxxed or had a hit piece against them is like it's like half the people.
Everyone, but it's fascinating seeing like the texts that are getting passed around from like, oh, this tech CEO who is running a public company. I'll get a text from someone being like, what podcast do you think they should go on? Like they want to do the Zuck playbook now. Yeah. And it's like they're running like a $20 billion public company and they're just like they're just getting pilled on this now. And it's like it's been like 2 years since like all these people started going on Lex and Rogan, and I'm like, okay, well, like here's the list.
You got to little bro them a little bit. You're like, dude, you're 2% of the size of Meta. Like,
but I think it's doable for some of these people. They're interesting. A lot of them are interesting. They've just been beaten down by like the HR apparatchiks.
It's actually a way to like kind of like pull up the ladder. For these public company CEOs being like, no more startup founders on like these big podcasts.
Only like real ballers.
Like,
I mean, the guy that
I'm thinking of trading,
the guy that I'm thinking of runs like a massive public tech company. And there was a hit piece on him younger when he was like coming up because I mean he was already like a billionaire and he was from a very wealthy family, but he bought like a McLaren or like a Ferrari or something, and they were like using that as evidence of like him like, I don't even know, like being materialist or something, or being a capitalist. Like it didn't make any sense.
Stimulating the economy.
And you know that his takeaway from like his comms team was like if you're going to do something nice, like make sure there's no cameras there. Like the press cannot know that you went on a boat or like went on a vacation. But what's interesting is that like if he actually like now Zuck is like, yes, I have one boat that follows me while I'm surfing so it can take videos of me. Yeah. Like I show up to UFC through the back entrance because I'm such a VIP. And Zuck just realized that like, wait, actually like
so much more important to be authentic.
And he's just authentic about it. And so if the public company CEO that's been like beaten down can actually, and that's what Lulu does a lot of times,
even the CEO,
coaching
I don't know who you're referencing, but the CEO from a wealthy family, like it's just okay to own it. The only way that you could legitimately get criticism is if he tries to go with a story of like I like grew up
exactly
like,
just don't be fake.
Just don't be fake. Authenticity wins every time.
Exactly. But you know the comms teams of the 2010s, their entire mandate was to destroy authenticity. And hide as much as possible, which is just very
unsustainable. Arguably leads to the hit piece.
Exactly, like, because people smell that like, oh, there's something off here. Like this person's being cagey, and so like there must be a bigger story here. When really it's just like, no, the person like created a lot of shareholder value, created a lot of consumer surplus. Consumers love the product. They're making money and they're enjoying it. And that's great. And if they become a car guy, that's great. Or if they become a hype beast fashion guy, like that's great too. Like it's fine. Very silly. But I hope he breaks through and gets out of his shell and does some cool stuff because I've been a fan of his for a long time. So be good. We've had Signal. We've reacted to this guy a few times now.
I don't even. It honestly is a testament to him crushing the X algo because I don't know if I follow him.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But most great founders are after vengeance in the form of success. They have been wronged in some way, either by being passed up, ignored, or overruled by people that they feel are inferior to them. The possibility that somewhere the person who fucked you will potentially read a headline where you succeed beyond belief is better than sex. It's kind of like a more aggressive, like hold grudges take.
Yeah, the example that pops into mind immediately is
Palmer Luckey,
obviously,
of course, yeah.
But like Parker Conrad is the same thing.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, if you're Jason, it's funny, it's the All In guys. You know, we don't have anything against All In. We just have things against undermonetized.
Well, I mean, we don't like that they don't advertise.
No, it's more of like we're against undermonetized.
Here. Exactly.
We're against undermonetized podcasts.
Generally.
We're not against All In.
Yeah.
But David and Jason having to watch Palmer and Parker Conrad both build these
big
decacorns, like the most like important company in SaaS. Kraft is a SaaS focused investor. And the most important company potentially in the 21st century in America, Anduril, that's got to hurt. So like I think this is probably real, and I think that Palmer and Parker, like they know that they're only like 5% through the mission, but they're like, I'm sure they appreciate the headlines.
Well, yeah, I mean, to your point about the 5% through the mission, I wonder if the motivation dies down once you have like total cultural victory over your nemesis, because at this point it's like the Palmer viral clip of him at All In like trashing Jason, like that goes viral like once every 6 months and gets like millions of views. Like it's like it's not like it's widely accepted that like Palmer has won that beef, and so I wonder if he needs like a new enemy.
Jason arguably doesn't
accept it.
Yeah. Otherwise, he wouldn't keep poking the bear.
That's good. I mean, maybe he needs to keep doing it, because we got to keep Palmer motivated.
It's good for Palmer.
We got to keep Palmer.
It's good for
America.
If it's good for Palmer, it's good for America.
Exactly. Yeah. Palmer's like, I could take off this weekend, but I could play more D&D.
I don't think
I got to get on the grind, because I got to keep proving that I'm.
It would better. Be since Parker and Palmer are both P names, strong. Since they're both billionaires, we'll eventually allow them to call in to the Polycom. But yeah, I don't think I would be shocked if they were like, yes, spite was the only reason.
True. Yeah.
It's more like Parker wanted to revolutionize SaaS.
Yeah.
Palmer wanted to build the most advanced weapon systems in the world, and like there's some like product. There has to be some product motivation there too.
Yeah. Whenever I hear Palmer talk about it, it seems like a lot of the reason he gives that talk is because he feels like there are dozens of founders who were destroyed and didn't get the opportunity that he did. And so he wants to like kind of do a cultural reset there, which I think is very valuable. So I think his victory lap is less for him and it's more for the community. Yeah, it's good. Let's go to Tariq Mansour, who says he posts a screenshot from what looks like WhatsApp. It looks like an investor said you should receive $12.4 million today, 5.4 from Neo and 7 million from me personally. I've already sent in the wire requests. We can figure out the terms later. Go, go, go. And he's posted with a comment. It's in times like these that investors show their true nature. Ali Partovi and Neo have just redefined the term conviction. Why'd you like this?
I mean, I like it for a lot of reasons. One, I like it because it's great for Google and Meta shareholders, because I'm sure a large part of that $12.4 million was immediately dumped into the ad platforms, right? Like,
I actually don't know what he's building.
This is Kalshi. This is a competitor to.
Oh,
Polygon.
really? No way. Okay. Yeah.
So the reason
they also advertise on podcasts.
The reason for the speed was because it's an election betting marketplace.
Makes sense.
And the election is coming up.
Yeah.
And they probably just wanted to spend a lot of money on ads. Otherwise, why the 12.4 million with no terms and So anyways, like honestly, props to the Neo guy. And yeah, I hope they're able to agree on terms, mutually agreeable terms. But yeah, it's kind of like crazy because I don't know the guy's full name. Apertovi.
I think it's Ali.
Ali Apertovi.
Ali Partovi.
Ali Partovi.
Yeah.
But like that's either going to be like something that each of them like scrub from like their Twitter, or it's going to, be like framed in his office at the fund about like conviction.
It's long tail.
It does feel like a highly, I don't know if people are going to be betting on sort of like state and like localized elections to the same degree as the presidential election. I would imagine like the volume dropped significantly. But it'll either be a legendary investment. It's very binary, legendary investment, or like that guy is going to be like a month from now being like, what was I thinking? But I'm sure their metrics are insane, right?
Yeah, like, I'm sure everything's ripping. It's great.
But yeah, one thing I was thinking on that note, on the topic of election betting markets, is what happens if the election results are contested by either side? Like, are the funds released when the winner is announced, or is like Polymarket and these other platforms going to have to hold funds until the person is actually like?
Yeah, I don't think it's as much of an issue as you think, because there's a lot of liquidity in the market. So what happens is, like, I don't know if Polymarket had the 2020 election on there, but let's say that they did. Like, obviously January 6th happened. The transfer of power happened on January 20th. But the election was like up in the air the night of. A few days later, it was like being called by like CNN and Fox and all of that. Then there was a lot of chaos and discussion. But through that time, like, let's say we just reran the 2020 election where it was like in question. Well, throughout the 2020 process, even on January 5th or January 7th, it would be at 99% Biden. So you could sell your Biden shares for 99 cents, or you could be buying Trump.
Very
right?
Cool. Yeah.
So there's still liquidity, and I think the actual like payout mechanism is less relevant, or it's not as critical.
Maybe this investor is thinking, we're gonna make millions and millions of dollars in fees over the next. We just want to be super capitalized so we can outspend.
And so even if there's like
ads.
a battle, like it's like you have 2 full months before the certification and then the transfer of power, and then it becomes pretty easy for Polymarket to say, okay, well, on January 20th, on the inauguration day, like everyone watches, one person's going to get inaugurate. We can close it now, and it's like, maybe you had your money locked up for an extra month or two, but you could have gotten out at 99 cents. But then you get the full 100 or whatever later. So if you're,
do you want to talk about Robinhood's betting market?
Oh yeah, is that in here? I don't know. We can just talk about how Robinhood launched betting markets as well. It seems like every firm is launching them. And I mean, Vegas has had it for a long time. They've been all over the place. I don't think they're in here. Maybe. Let me see.
Going to Vegas on election night and just live betting in the casino sounds like I only like gambling on private companies. I don't enjoy like other forms of gambling. Yeah. But it sounds like it'd be fun.
Yeah, I don't think I have it in here, but either way, Robinhood also launched election betting, which makes a lot of sense.
Probably within 24 hours of that investment.
Because everyone saw that, like, okay, this is just huge.
Big thing.
But yeah, I mean, just making it easy for people to bet on it. I wonder if it'll increase turnout. I wonder if we'll see turnout material increase. I'm fascinated to see like
that would be awesome,
because this is really like the
that would
first,
be very American.
It's the first election with like serious liquidity in the prediction markets. There's always been PredictIt and whatnot, but the liquidity's always been really low, like a few million. Now we're in like the billions.
But it would be very American if turnouts increased.
The only thing that matters is gambling,
because people wanted. They're like, I made this bet.
Now I have to vote.
I want to win.
Yeah.
Or like people start betting against themselves because they're just like.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with the prediction market is like you could want one candidate to win and you could bet on the other one as a hedge, right?
Hedging.
Like, I think my business is going to suffer under Trump or under Kamala, so I'm gonna bet on the other one as like a hedge. So if I lose, at least I have more cash on the balance sheet. It's like not that irrational.
At what point does the Fed start betting on the market itself?
Imagine if we went like 4 orders of magnitude of liquidity in the last election to this one. Yeah. Like imagine if next Polymarket is like, oh yeah, there's $4 trillion being bet on the election.
Yeah, pension funds, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Massa gets in on it.
Sovereign wealth funds are just great. Like And it's just like, oh, don't do the prediction markets. It's just whales duking it out. Like, you're gonna get smoked. Like it has no. It's completely uncorrelated with the market, with the actual like results. Now it's just like raw financial markets.
I mean, it's gonna be fascinating to see like how accurate these things are. And I'm sure
there needs to be we should maybe do like a TB markets in turmoil that just analyzes like the betting.
I mean, if the final poly market is 51 to 49 and they get it quote unquote wrong, the narrative is going to be like it's useless. People do not understand probability and statistics at all. It's just going to be such a meme. But if they get it right, even if they're up by 1% or something, it's going to be like it was.
But it's partly an entertainment product, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why it's in the news category, and that's another thing that's interesting between Kalshi and Polymarket is that they're both marketing as like we are the number one app in the App Store, but they're in separate categories.
I don't think Kalshi says that. I think they say they were the legal.
Yeah, I mean that's their main one, but I have seen a screenshot of like, oh, congrats to Kalshi, they're like now number one in the App Store, but they're in a different category. Polymarket is in like news, which I think is like more competitive. Maybe I'm not exactly sure, but you got to call Nikita Beer to figure out like how to game the App Store and get to the top.
If he just gets his intro numbers up, he can call into the Polycom.
He's gonna get there soon. But we should stay on Masayoshi Son, the head of SoftBank, is here quoted saying that $9 trillion of capex for artificial superintelligence is very reasonable. In fact, it may be too small. I love this guy. Amazing. 9 trillion. Numbers get big. Scaling laws. We'll see if they hold. GPT-5 is pretty important. Doing the build out now.
I feel like my only critique of Masa is that he hasn't made the AI boom enough about him. Like
he's getting there. He's starting. This is the beginning.
Yeah, hopefully this is the start of a trend because SoftBank like was every other headline
just high volatility
during 2021, and so I just I like him. I would
Didn't they own like 10% of Nvidia like a couple of years ago and they sold at the bottom or something?
Yeah, a few people did that.
Rough.
But yeah, I think the guy's he's had some big bets that went very right.
Yep.
So got to give him that. It doesn't have to be right every time.
Like just being a conduit from like Asia to these incredibly capex intensive businesses, like the money's got to come from somewhere. It's important. Like it's not going to all be, Silicon Valley VC firms as they scale. But 9 trillion is a big number. I mean, that's even bigger than what Sam was saying, right? I mean, there was like that kind of jokey report that Sam was like, oh, we're going to need, trillions of dollars. But it was like, he was kind of like memeing about it and was like, this is kind of fake news. But Moss is just like, no, it's real.
Yeah.
I'm more bullish than the founders who are running the companies. That's always good. I mean, that's the story with Adam, right? Adam Newman, like they get in the limousine and Adam's like, you need 500 million. He's like, we need 500 million. He thinks it's like crazy. And he's like, no, you need 5 billion or something like that.
Yeah.
It's great. Highly related. Farzad says, it feels like we're about to enter the golden age of the United States. Well, I mean, we covered this last time with the Economist cover. The United States is in a phenomenal position. The dollar's very strong. The economy's ripping. There's a lot of chaos, and it feels like we're more divided than ever. But I firmly believe that things are not that crazy in America.
Things are more American than ever.
They're more American than ever. And I was thinking about this when people were like, American politics have never been crazier. They're so crazy. But then the
craziest experience I had recently was like 3 hours ago trying to drive to the studio with the LA Dodgers having just won the World Series.
The World Series,
not the American Baseball League Series. The World Series. They just won the World Series, and there was 100,000 people turned out on a Friday morning.
Wild. But you think about like, okay, there was like this Trump assassination attempt. There's all like the Biden Kamala hot swap. Like politics does seem kind of crazy. But then I was going back and looking at like the timeline for JFK, and it was like there's a massive Cuban Missile Crisis. He avoids the apocalypse. 6 months later, his Marilyn Monroe is like singing him like his what's the word, like not concubine, like his mistress is openly serenading him on TV. Happy birthday, Mr. President. You know that one?
No.
Oh yeah. So she's like public.
Not
It was. It was a
Sorry,
Marilyn
I was
Monroe.
thinking Bill Clinton.
No. This is like Marilyn Monroe. But
God.
like it's very clear to everyone in America that the president is like openly having an affair with this like Hollywood starlet, as opposed to like with Trump. There's always like weird stuff, but it's like very like tangential.
New York
and minor.
Times didn't have an
then,
issue with it back then.
No, they endorse him, and then 6 months later he gets shot and killed. It's like that is unquestionably a more crazy time in American politics than right now.
Yeah.
Like we're not even close. We're at like a 6 out of 10.
Imagine listening to a Technology Brothers episode from that era.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have talked about any of those things because we don't talk about politics.
Exactly. It would have been all about I don't know, DARPA and the internet or something.
Ben, can we add to the sheet we don't not discussing podcasts? Or sorry.
Politics?
Politics.
Yeah. So Miranda Nover says the market is wide open for a Raya-esque LinkedIn. I think this is a good idea. I like this.
There was an Andreessen-backed company that just like paired you up with like a relevant connection every single week?
Yeah, I joined one of those. There's a couple of VC firms that do that, kind of just like it's like speed dating for business people.
Senra would absolutely
his head would explode.
Worst nightmare. Just getting connected with a random person.
Yeah.
Except what if we created the Founders Podcast app that just connected? It was only him on one side.
Yeah,
and just connected him to a different Founders listener every single week. He would
He'd
pay a lot of money for that.
Yeah,
to like organize, like you know.
Yeah.
If you're an indie hacker out there, go build the Founders Connect.
This is not an indie hacker project. This Raya-esque LinkedIn, like you have to be super connected.
Because Senra app.
This is something that someone like the All In podcast or someone who's like really connected can start, because like the whole thing is like you're just gonna be going down market the entire time. So you have to start with like the absolute top, like the cream of the crop, and then move down slowly.
Clubhouse was basically that.
Clubhouse did a great job of that, but I don't know, difficult, like scaled too fast or something. I don't really know.
It just should have gone fully into dating.
Yeah, I think also like they didn't like. I hired an engineer who worked at Tinder once, and he said that one of the tricks that they had was for like the bots and the really like toxic users, they wouldn't ban them. They would put them in a shadow pool, so they were kind of on their own network within Tinder.
Because banning them would hurt the metrics.
No, no, it wouldn't be. I mean, I'm sure, but no, it's because if you ban them, they'll just create another account. So you don't want to ban them. You want to say like everything's normal for you, but you're just talking to bots, and you're just living in this like matrix world. So that's kind of what Clubhouse should have done. Is been like the Mark Andreessen and the tech people are in a bubble.
Just launched
They're
too
in
soon.
A filter bubble. But then the people that launch, like there were a lot of people who started joining Clubhouse, and they were like, why do I have to follow this Mark guy? I don't like him. Like, I don't know anything he talks about, right? Because they're just like want to be on there and talk about sports or whatever. Yeah. But Clubhouse was still like funneling people into like tech.
Like Alicia Horowitz, right? Isn't that Ben Horowitz?
Yeah,
wife?
Felicia.
Was like Felicia. Sorry.
Yeah, she held like a whole dinner series on there and stuff, and that was cool. But it's like they probably need to be a little bit more deliberate about being like, okay, we have dominated the tech community. Now we're going to go after like the sports community or the wrestling community or some other micro community. Get designers or get whatever, and bring those people on, but do it in a really smooth way where it's like, okay, we're going to go after the gardening community, so we got the biggest YouTuber who talks about gardening on here, and he's going to be hosting stuff. And if you're a gardening person that gets acquired through our gardening focused ads, goes in, and then you're in this bubble and you don't even see the tech stuff that's happening.
So
instead you just scroll and be like, it'd be tech conversation here, and then just like complete nonsense. It didn't even filter by language. At a certain point I would scroll and it would just be like completely a different language, and it's like, you should know that I don't speak that language. You should just not show me that.
It does feel like the product would have been benefited in a lot of ways from Gen AI. Yeah. Both like, imagine being able to join a room full of bots and like have a conversation, like full, like maybe somebody should build like Clubhouse with just bots where you could like join a conversation and just rage about politics.
This goes back to just berating people.
Yeah.
You could get on stage and just be like, you're fucking wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow.
But I don't think it's still under discussed the fact that Twitter Spaces just destroyed 4 billion, one new feature, because I was just thinking like, wow, I miss Clubhouse. I miss like those like, you would have at Party Round, we would put our stand-ups on Clubhouse.
Oh, really?
Anybody could just join.
That's awesome.
And a lot of those conversations are still happening. They're just now on Twitter Spaces or Discord.
Yeah, I mean, also under discussed that like Twitter was the company that did it. Like a lot of other social networks did launch.
They were like
clones, but Twitter, everyone was saying, oh, it's so poorly mismanaged. But there was this moment where something was happening at Twitter even before Elon bought it, where everyone was like, we got to make something happen.
Yeah.
So we got to step it up. And so they launched like the community notes thing. I don't think that was like Elon showing up and being like, I have an idea. I think it was like in the pipeline, and he was like, get this out now. Like, it's good. Just ship it. We'll work on it. And Spaces was the same thing, where they actually moved just as fast as Facebook to get that out, because they saw it as a risk, which it was. Makes sense.
Yeah. And this is an example, the Andreessen Clubhouse X relationship dynamic is an example of the markets working as they should, which Andreessen ended up losing money on Clubhouse, but they'll make it all back on X, right?
Love it.
Which I appreciate.
Fantastic. Do you know this account, Grit Cult? I've never seen them before, but
I'm familiar with
this post is 2 words: live intensely. Read the Intensity Manifesto now, all caps.
Yeah.
The Intensity Doctrine. Intensity is the universal language of God gifted to humanity. All other animals live according to their nature. Humans are made to surpass it. And it goes on for like a couple paragraphs.
So the reason I thought this was relevant is I think we should create the American Manifesto. This is what it means to be American.
Sure.
This is why you should be American. This is why you can be spiritually American.
This is why you should not be un-American.
Even if you're in even if you're born in Singapore, you can be spiritually American.
Sure.
And I think we should give out spiritual citizenship
to
foreigners that feel more at home in America, even if they're still getting through the immigration system. So
great.
So anyways, hey, ChatGPT, please write me the American Manifesto.
I want to go to, we were just talking about Mark, but we're back on Mark Andreessen. He says Claude knows, and posts like a massive screenshot of a huge block of text. But basically, he asked Claude, hey, Claude, noble creation of Anthropic, tell me, my good man, if a company in a nascent industry started to gain traction and become a leader in the space and then began pushing for government regulation in said insipid industry, what would you call this strategy? And it seems like whoever wrote this prompt was kind of like baiting Claude into admitting that they were doing regulatory capture. Is that why you found this interesting?
Yeah, and it's just such a perfect example of why LLMs are so magic, is because historically you would have needed a comedian, somebody that's as funny as a comedian that understood government regulation and the history of government regulation and regulatory capture, and you would have needed your guy, and you would have had to pay them like $5,000 to do this. Instead, it's free.
Yeah.
And so this is an example. It's the perfect meme, because it's showing how incredible the technology is while absolutely just decimating Anthropic's.
Do you think it's real? Because you could just write this prompt and then just edit
a human couldn't write anything that good.
You don't think so?
No.
Yeah.
I don't even think my regulatory capture guy could do that.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I just remember the thing with LLMs for me is some of my core childhood memories are sitting around a campfire with my dad.
Yeah.
And him being like, I'm going to write a song about Jordy's love for soccer, and then he would just make that song, and I would just be head exploded. But now you can just be write me a song that talks about Jordy's love for soccer, and it will do it as good as my dad. And right now it just can't play the guitar yet. But when indie robots create guitar playing,
have you played with Suno, the music generation one?
Yeah.
I haven't played with it, but I think it's.
I actually tried to, and it didn't get very far.
It seems like it's still in a pretty early stage, but it's really good for the stems. So you just need a little drum riff instead of going to a sample website and buying one. You can just say I want it to be a little bit louder, a little bit quieter, a little bit faster, and it'll just generate that. Move on to the next one. We have a tweet from David Sachs of the All In podcast. We talk a lot of trash about how he's failed to monetize his podcast as much as we'd like, but obviously a dear friend. David writes, it takes effort for a search engine not to be able to find an interview with 34 million views between the biggest podcaster in the world and the most famous person in the world. He got 60K likes.
60K. Can we just talk about how many likes 60K is?
It's so many.
Like, I think I've maxed out at like maybe like
5K is like a good like tech banger. I think I've hit like 20 or 30 on like something a little bit more generic. But it's hard. But that's why politics. This is the thing about All In is like they're going broader for a good reason. Like there are more people that are interested in politics than tech. It's just a bigger addressable market. It's totally rational, and it's also a good service to tech because I'd rather have David than Kara Swisher talking about tech in the politics realm. And this was something that tech people just completely obviated themselves from. They just didn't talk about it at all.
We should do a GoFundMe for Kara Swisher to try to make her a billionaire so that she just has a more positive view on tech.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure she's rich. And like, I don't know, Balaji's always talking about how she comes from money too. So, but this is talking about YouTube censorship of the Joe Rogan and Donald Trump episode, which was weird because when this originally came out, Rogan was like, everyone was like, oh, like, why is it not showing up on YouTube? And Rogan was like, we literally just had a problem with the uploader. Like, they are not like messing with us. Like, it's not a big deal, guys. Like, there's not a conspiracy.
Turns out.
I don't think it's shadow banned at all. Like,
where's my tinfoil hat?
I think it's widely available. I don't think you can get 34 million views on a shadow banned thing. I think it was getting pushed in the algorithm and stuff. I think YouTube is very seriously pulled back on that, and for good reason. There probably wasn't anything that crazy
as a YouTuber.
In there. Yeah, well, I mean, I do have takes on like the YouTube stuff, which is that. Part of the reason Joe Rogan blew up so huge on YouTube originally was because he chose the 3-hour format. So the algorithm, like the YouTube algorithm, is a expected value machine. So it takes the average view duration, which is how long on average someone will spend watching that piece of content. So for a 10-minute video, if it's really engaging, the average view duration might be like 5 or 6 minutes. Mr. Beast is like, he's like the most cracked at like retention. So like you have to watch to the end because you want to see who makes this who wins the $1 million, and then every few seconds he's re-engaging you with a new storyline or a new thing. There's no slow parts where you're like, actually I'm going to go back to whatever. So Mr. Beast on a 20-minute video might be getting 12 minutes of average view duration. Now Rogan with podcasts, it's slower because it's just conversational. So there's lots of opportunities to be like, oh, I'll stop listening. But by going longer, even if he has the same average view duration as a 1-hour show, he'll have 3 times the amount of like expected value. And so that's more time to sell ads. And so the algorithm wants to sell more ads and keep you on the platform. And so it gets pushed. And then it multiplies all that by the thumbnail click-through rate. So if you see Donald Trump in the thumbnail of a Joe Rogan episode, you're more likely to click that than just someone, talking about Trump like randomly, right?
Yeah. I think would a better test be like how many people saw that in their recommended? Right.
Sure.
If Joe Rogan, if somebody uses Joe Rogan uses YouTube just to watch Joe Rogan,
did it show up in their feed, or did they have to click in and see it?
Exactly.
And I didn't see any reports of that.
But those people are not really on tech Twitter. If they're the guys that are going YouTube.com. And
but the big comparison this week is about the Kamala interview that she did with Shannon Sharp, I believe.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing,
and that was only 1 hour long. And the Trump Rogan was, or they were comparing it to the JD Vance episode, which has more views, but it's 3 hours long. And so it just naturally, even if it has the same retention percentage, it will have more average view duration. And so ceteris paribus, it should get more views in the YouTube algorithm. This is why a lot of YouTubers are moving to longer and longer form content. Like it used to be, you do like whatever, because you could just upload any file. 5-minute episodes. Then everyone shifted to 10 minutes because you could put 2 ads in. Amazing.
Well, part of it is
and then it became longer.
Part of it is YouTube viewership is now, I think, predominantly on the TV.
Yep,
I think
TV is huge.
Like
it's not. I don't think it's more than half, but it's growing huge. And also, just people want to throw something on and then just go do their laundry. It's laundry TV, right? Yeah. And so a lot of times when you're scrolling through YouTube, you don't want to just like, a 5-minute video and then I gotta find another one.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. People are having fun outside.
We are hearing gunshots at the Dodgers.
It's fireworks, probably.
All right, that's what.
Here's the Robin Hood one. I don't know if we need to cover this, but we already did. Let's skip it. Okay. Let's move on to. People are going hard. Let's move on to Max, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, says, we are looking at buying some land to eventually build a home. Wife has Zillow open. I'm like, that's the wrong app. Proceed to pull up Onks Hunt. I don't know what that is. Immediately identify 10 landowners in the area that we want to be in with, either multiple tracts or tracts large enough to subdivide. Time to start knocking on doors. Do you understand this at all?
So basically the next tweet is from his family that says, unfortunately, Max was attempting to contact somebody while walking on their land and was shot.
No.
Sorry. No, but the app is something that you can use to find land that's available to hunt on.
Oh, right? Okay. So if I have a ton of land, or like it's like Airbnb for hunting territory.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. So I have a huge ranch.
It's just like understanding like land use and like where you can go and things like that. So
okay.
I just thought this was like the I thought it was funny because it's like mansplaining like the most complicated way. I mean, there's a lot of alpha and just like not being like only dependent on Zillow for trying to find your next piece of property.
It's going to be more competitive. This will be less
more competitive, and like that's how you're going to find like actual like deals.
And I mean, in my neighborhood, like it seems like almost everything transacts like off market, and we're always getting like phone calls from real estate agents being like, "Hey, you want to sell?" Like that type of thing, as opposed to like Zillow where it's kind of a zoo and a mess.
Yeah,
interesting. If you had to buy
competition is for losers.
If you had to buy land in some far off place, where would you go? In America, obviously, you're not leaving.
Yeah.
Montana, Idaho,
Utah. I think Montana's cool. I think the real play, going back to the Hereticon piece on terraforming, is land around the Salton Sea.
That's good.
And then getting a new pipeline over
there. And that's pretty easy to connect to America, to California and LA. Yeah. If you need to. I'm always super bullish on Alaska. I got canceled on Alaska Twitter because I was too bullish on Alaska. I was saying like,
they were like, don't talk about Alaska.
They were like, don't come up here,
First
you
rule of
tech idiot. Yeah.
Well,
it was my point was that you need to be bullish on Alaska because if climate change is real, like it'll be the last bastion of like beachfront property. You get a mountain up there, sea levels rise. Los Angeles is 140
We need to be
degrees.
making big bets.
Yeah. Well, this was what inspired me because I had a friend who, I think their like great grandfather got back from World War I with like a payout of like, I don't know, like 50 cents or whatever the money was worth back then. But that was like a ton of money. And so they go out to California, go west, and they buy something like 100,000 acres in what is now Napa. And so the family just has generational wealth from a guy that just made a good real estate deal, like was never really in business.
No, so that's actually an interesting one on that. Growing up in Northern California in Sonoma County, you can still buy like 100 acres for like $600,000.
It's amazing.
It's like nothing.
And so, that's getting harder and harder to do. But
and
not
I
in
actually
Alaska.
think the interesting thing is buying land based on bets that firefighting technology will get more advanced.
Sure.
Like there's a lot of areas of the Santa Monica Mountains near where I am. And there's like really cheap land because to insure a 2-bedroom home would be $60,000 a year against fire. So it's not economical to buy there. But if drones like totally, revolutionize firefighting and you just have like Los Angeles County Fire is just swarms of drones that can like quickly attack and, dismantle, fires before they start or protect against arson or these different things. A lot of that land suddenly becomes pretty valuable and interesting. Yeah.
My other flip side of related to the technology advancement thing is like, if you think that we'll like solve climate change, essentially, it means that there'll probably be like on-demand nuclear, so you can just go up to what is still tundra because the climate hasn't warmed, and then you can just run AC and heat, and it's dark, artificial light,
just
really
melt
easily.
The ice, melt the ice.
You can just do whatever you want. You can terraform it, essentially, to be
localized
wonderful.
Terraforming.
Exactly, and then Starlink makes the internet really fast up there. You have your power generation. Like you can live a very modern life in like what is essentially like complete tundra. And you can still go.
And
buy
people
like
that complain about the cost of home ownership, it's like, you can get a really nice house for $100,000
in Alaska.
Go
do it. In fact, there's still homesteading there, so you can get paid by the government to go live on land because we want to like defend it from the Russians because they'll just like move over and be like, no one's living here. We'll just take it. The border is moved now. It's great. The next stage of capitalism is love, says Jacob. Love your customer and your supplier. Love your investor and your lender and your creditor. Charge fair market price with heartfelt gratitude. Pay fair market price with heartfelt gratitude. Love capitalism.
I think if I had to define one, if I had to use a tweet to define this podcast, it would be this. So yes. I don't know this guy.
No.
But that is what this show is all about, right? If you start a podcast because another podcast is under monetized, that's basically an ode to capitalism.
It is.
So I don't think there's much else that needs to be said except frame it.
Just love capitalism. It's fantastic. Luke Ferrator. Did you meet him this week? He was there.
What's his
Luke Ferrator is a genius hacker kid who was either the main winner of the Scroll Prize that Nat Friedman did, or winner. And I think he wrote a bunch of machine learning code to help translate the ancient scrolls that were basically impossible to see. Casey, I forget what his name is, Hanmer. He is also like just a genius scientist, but he just looked at them and realized like everyone was like struggling to decipher the scroll. We should do a whole thing on scrolls. It's fascinating, but the scrolls, these ancient scrolls that are they're in Herculaneum, is that where it is, or Athens? What was the? It was after the volcano.
The library of, was it? No, it wasn't.
It was Vesuvius. The Vesuvius scrolls. That's what it is. So Mount Vesuvius explodes. Ash covers everything, and there's this library with ancient writings, scrolls that are entombed, and they find them, but they're so calcified, I guess would be the word. I don't even remember. They're just like petrified, and so if you try and unwrap them, they just disintegrate immediately. So it's impossible to read them. But Nat Friedman went over there and like put one in like an MRI machine, I think, and scanned them, and then put that data on GitHub and put out a reward for a couple $100,000, maybe $1 million, if you could decipher these with the raw data. And so there's a bunch of people that worked on this. There was like a Discord, and a bunch of people kind of like came up with interesting ideas. I think what's cool is
like the new tech elite, like Nat Friedman, Elad Gil. They're all starting to like do things with their money. And Elad Gil was on a podcast recently, and they were like, the hosts were pressing him on like, well, how do you like, are you going to monetize this or whatever? And he's just like, no, I just think it's cool.
Well, this is the thing. People have been saying, like, we need better elites, because for a long time, the elites would make a ton of money, and then they would just like constantly money launder all their money through like these fake nonprofits that just like made the world worse, instead of actually going and building like just a huge new library that everyone can enjoy. It's just like there's so many amazing institutions, like going back to like like so many great monuments, and like the Louvre, and like all these like cultural monuments that live on for so long, where it's just like some rich guy
that's
who just
a
did something.
Thing is like trying to build new monuments.
Or just like, oh, someone built like a huge house, like Hearst Castle, you go and visit, it's like this like kind of crazy guy, but now it's like this monument that just lives there forever, and that's amazing. Instead of just like, oh cool, you have like 6 different glass boxes that look identical in every major city. Like, who cares? Like, stop spending your money that way. Go build a castle and then turn it into an art museum in 50 years when when your descendants are fighting over the estate and can't sort it out, so it just turns over to the public or something. But anyway, Luke is great, and he just open sources his ideas, I guess, and just gives out these great ideas for free. He says he wants to start, or it proposes, a space-based pizza delivery in 100 seconds that uses re-entry heat to cook the pizza. It's kind of like
it's amazing.
It's like what happens after Varda, you know?
If
once
you can
there's
make
stuff
drugs
going
in space,
you can make pizza in space.
And so, I mean, Domino's should act, one of the best performing stocks of all time, should be calling him up and like giving him like a 8-figure contract to figure this out.
It's like rods from God. Now there'll be like, garlic bread from God or something.
No, I'm excited for the future. It is interesting to think about, like, even, is somebody doing like pizza drone delivery, right? Because like doing all your packages like kind of doesn't make sense. But like if you could get a pizza like within like 2 minutes, like that would be so cool. So who's doing like drone delivery for food? Because like if you think about it, it's like the issue with drones is like they can't carry like that much weight. So like ordering your like from Whole Foods, a grocery run doesn't make sense, but like getting like Domino's like absolutely makes sense. And it makes a lot more sense than these sort of like surface based like autonomous like delivery devices. So
I love it. Should we stay on drones? With Jason H. Liu says,
can we talk about
what?
We've gone an order of magnitude more tweets.
Oh yeah,
since the first episode.
I mean, it's gonna be a 5-hour show, so buckle up, get in here. You were like when I look in our chat where we post these tweets, like Jordy was posting them at like 3 a.m. and then again at like 7 a.m. So it's the strongest evidence that money doesn't sleep.
Exactly.
It's just you're scrolling the timeline and
yeah.
sharing
At
stuff.
Hereticon, I'd feel bad because I'm like, John's out there like having like a good time, and I'm just like blowing up his phone. Like it's like 4 tweets in like 3 minutes.
This is more important than any other work.
Yeah.
So there was a scoop. The biggest U.S. drone maker, Skydio, which supplies Ukraine, faces a supply crisis after China bans the company from selling batteries to the group. And Jason says, one, if you're a U.S.-based drone manufacturer, you really should not be using Chinese-made batteries. Not only in principle, but also China can ban you from buying two. Two, Jesus, Skydio has been using Chinese-made batteries. I mean, this is true in like so many hard tech companies where it's just like there's no other option. Like for a long time, like small drone motors. I did like a survey because I was thinking that. Somebody should, I don't know if it'd be a good like venture company, but somebody should start like the American Drone Motor Company and just focus on motor manufacturing. There's one company that makes these small like brushless motors that go on the corners of the DJI drones basically in the US, and they outsourced to China after a while because it was like some family owned thing. They needed better margins. It was very rational at the time. They didn't think it was a big deal. And now they do make some motors, but only like larger motors in the US. And I was like, it's almost like it would be like a charity project. There needs to be some government incentive or something. Like it's very, very hard, or just like a big meme, and then all the VCs can just pile into it, and then we get like this dividend of this company that might not be like a power law winner because it's just manufacturing one part.
No, I figured it out.
What is it? Tell me.
I'm not going to say it on the podcast.
Okay. But, we'll figure it out.
TB incubation.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. A lot. I like retooling supply chains takes decades.
Yeah.
And because it's not just, it's like you say like Chinese made batteries, but it's like, well, what are the ingredients to those batteries? Where did those come from? Who does the packaging? What about the machines that package the batteries? Like,
this is so critical in defense tech specifically because it's the first thing that somebody's going to turn off. Yeah. You know,
and the average tech person like only understands the supply chain, like maybe in chips, in the sense that they know that like, you know, OpenAI is partnered with Microsoft, who is a hyperscaler who builds a data center that buys NVIDIA chips, and NVIDIA is built at TSMC, and TSMC uses ASML, and ASML uses Trump mirrors and lasers from Philips and stuff. And so people understand a little bit of that just from like the Chip War book and a few other books that have been out there, and like Asianometry and Dylan Patel and whatnot. But beyond that, like that same like complexity of like, oh, there's like 7 different companies in the supply chain that are critical, like that applies to more than just chips. It applies to everything. Chips are just like the hot thing right now, but it's important for motors, it's important for batteries, it's important for so many other pieces of the supply chain. So it's going to be a lot of upheaval for these companies. A lot of upheaval.
Yeah, the even I've tweeted about DJI before, but that Americans buying a spy network for China is like the most insane thing.
Well, I interviewed a guy at Hereticon who is buying a ton of DJI stuff because he's figured out how to run open source software on it. Because he says that the Chinese code will call home and talk home. We actually proved this in Sunnyvale back in 2012. We were in this like hacker house, and we downloaded from the internet Red Star Linux, which is the Linux fork that North Korea uses. And when we put it on a computer, we installed it on a computer on a private network so we could monitor the traffic. And as soon as you fire it up, it starts calling home. And it's just like all the keys are logged. So if you install this anywhere, not even in North Korea, it's like all going back to home. And obviously, you know, DJI probably doing the same thing. But but the hardware is the hardware. And so he's like, I don't want to say exactly what he's buying, but he's like, he's very bullish on like some of their products that are very high quality, as long as you
the hardware is fantastic, and it was probably heavily subsidized because it is spyware.
Yeah. Should we move on to Brandon? says, AI is going to take our jobs. I'd like to see AI take my job. It's 3 Monster Energy White Ultra, 0 sugar, dumbbells, steak, and just a Creed album.
The only thing it's missing is
XL nicotine pouches.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what, how is he describing his job? just eating steak, lifting weights, drinking energy drinks, and listening to Creed. Like,
yeah, I think this is like, I think this is more of like, it's more of like you need to look at the deeper meaning of the tweet, which is that like your job is to create and maintain this vessel that allows you to carry out God's will, right? It's more about building the vessel that builds the thing. So I think that probably went over people's heads, but I think that's all the more reason to cover it.
Somebody needs to build the Monster Energy for LLMs. Something like, you know how you can adjust the temperature on LLMs to like make them a little bit more creative or not? Like, when are they going to create the stimulants for these ML? Like, can you get them drunk? And then can they?
That is like more? That's an awesome product for somebody to build, which is just like it's a thin layer over LLMs, but you can just like make it drunk. Like,
exactly.
Give it a Monster.
Like, exactly.
Give it a Percocet. Give it some fentanyl. You know, like that.
You can kind of do that where you, in the prompt you can just say like you are drunk, like, you know, or you are a McKinsey consultant.
Did some
like
bad cocaine.
Yeah. Give me your best ideas.
Yeah.
Let's go. Should we move on to liquidity? He says, Harvard Business School graduates, after starting a search fund and acquiring a Kentucky-based trash management company, doing $2 million of last 12 months EBITDA, and it's Vivek Ramaswamy, I think, getting out of a trash truck or something like that as a politics stunt.
Yeah.
But what is he saying here, and what is the trend of Harvard Business School graduates starting search funds and acquiring like real businesses? This is like a big meme right now, right?
So all of this basically started because of Twitter, which people were like, hey, instead of going and working a soul-sucking job at Goldman Sachs, you can buy a business that does $3 million of EBITDA. Yep. You can lever it up, use some debt to acquire it, and then you could make your investors whole within the first few years. And then from that point on, like, you could work 20 hours a week and be making a few $1,000,000 a year and like living the dream, right?
And you're kind of like an owner-operator at that
you're
point.
An owner-operator.
And it's the entrepreneurial dream without needing to go from 0 to 1 in a very competitive area, all that.
And so there were some big successes and people that had figured this out like decades ago or a decade plus ago, where they were creating these things called search funds, which is like it's like an SPV almost to buy a company that you haven't identified yet.
So it's basically like investors come to you and they say, Jordy, I trust that you'll be able to find something good and manage it well. So when you find the company, I'm in for $1 million.
And I think sometimes there's like some
upfront as a management fee. Where
so
I'll give you something,
because it's better to spend 2 years and buy the right
flying
company
around and meeting people. So there's going to be some operational expense for their salary up front, but most of it is going to come in the purchase, right?
And the challenge here is that people, when they are looking at a business, they're like, okay, I found this trash company. It does $2.5 million a year of earnings. Like, it's been operating this place for 20 years. It has these contracts. It's basically a localized monopoly. Like, it's awesome. Oh, and by the way, they don't use computers, right? Like they look at all the like software that we could add and all this stuff, and
it's paper
and
faxes.
The reason that like there are great opportunities there. They're still using a fax machine, right? And so that's like what people get fixated on.
We'll move them on to DocuSign.
It'll
be cheaper.
And we'll have 5 account reps.
Exactly.
We'll have a great customer experience. No, but in the trap is that they think that, it's just fundamentally a great business, and we're going to layer in technology and make it an even better business. And the tough truth is that a company is basically as good as its management. And if that person had been, let's look at the trash company in a local, small local market that's doing a few $1,000,000 a year in EBITDA. That person running the company, yes, he may have like used a really old generation iPhone and like not checked his email that often and used a fax machine or whatever. But if he was like effectively the mayor of the town, and everyone loves him, and he can call anyone up at any point and get anything done.
He has his guys.
He's got his guys in town, and he's got a relationship with the person that decides like which contract, like is like basically, you know, if you come in and you're this like search fund MBA bro who comes in and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to buy this company and like digitize it. And you realize like the employees are like difficult to find and retain and they hate you. Like the contracts are like much more oriented around, much more oriented around like relationships. And you're getting in there and you're realizing like, whoa, like this company doesn't need to be digitized. Like it needs somebody who's spent their entire life running a trash company in this small town. And the owner's sitting there being like, wow, this company was unbelievably time intensive. They just gave me $10 million and now I'm like one of the wealthiest people in my town. Oh, and by the way, I get to buy back the business for nothing in like 3 years when you like run it into the ground. And I'm going to hire back all the old employees. I'm going to get all my old contracts back. So like
I'm going to cancel the DocuSign contract.
Like, cancel DocuSign. Add another.
Buy a new fax machine for $50.
So I think a lot of like
people
talk about these search funds and they're like, oh, be careful, you're just going to buy a job. If you buy a company with less than $500,000 of earnings, you're like buying a job.
Yeah.
But like in the real risk is like you lever this thing up and you realize that it was a great business because that founder was a great person. They just didn't look like,
they didn't fit the normal mold of like, oh, they're like a Stanford dropout hacker and they know programming, so they're so good. So they can install DocuSign. It's great. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder how it'll shake out. Maybe the Harvard Business School graduates will move on to something else. It is interesting how there's like, these eras of trendy, career paths that come out of HBS, like, it was banking. Then it was like YC for a while. Now it's like the search fund. I wonder what the next thing's going to be.
Search funds are just financial innovation, which is very American, and there's always going to be a next fund. Maybe the next search fund is just pumped up fund.
I was talking to Sebastian Malabai about this. Do you know him? He wrote The Power Law. Cool. He wrote More Money Than God about hedge funds, kind of historian. And I was asking him, like, what do you think the next like big VC tech bubble will be? And he was very bullish on biotech. He wants to like write the next book on like the flagship pioneering model, the company that like incubated Moderna and all those companies. And like as that becomes like more like productized and
biotech's American.
Yeah, and just biotech becoming like right now it's in this weird like it's a very financialized but not in like the VC realm where you take a company public really early. There's all this like tech transfer between the universities. It's like very complex. But if it becomes a little bit more easy, like you're just like installing some LLM and there's an AWS for lab
pumped
capacity.
Up fund for biotech.
Exactly, that's the thing. Well, stay tuned because I think next week we're going to do a deep dive on Ozempic. Should be fun. Let's move on to this. Spain says every name is like completely ridiculous.
The nation of Spain.
Yeah, no, SPANE, which is Sperry's and Nike something. I cannot believe BlackRock invited a bunch of influencers to their ETF launch party like it's a tequila brand. Truly incredible stuff. So there's a TikTok here that I imagine is someone pumping some ETF.
Yeah, so why is BlackRock, the creators of what's that big festival in the desert?
Burning Man.
Creators of Burning Man. Why is BlackRock like innovating with like understanding media and like doing like tequila style launch parties when our presidential candidates haven't figured out that they should be vlogging yet?
Yeah.
Right. So like this is an example of the private markets at work
and
understanding how to generate and capture and monetize attention. I'm the only thing I can say about this tweet is I'm pissed that we weren't invited.
Seriously, BlackRock.
Is anybody more publicly a fan of BlackRock and their various financial products and services than us?
Yeah.
I'll wait.
For sure. I wonder what the ETF is for exactly. I need to dig into it. But
doesn't matter what it is as long as people can speculate.
They need to ETF more things. Like the Bitcoin ETF was a big moment. The Ethereum ETF as well. Need more ETFs. I mean, they're essentially like shitcoins in the public markets, so you can just trade.
Yeah,
it's great. Back to American exceptionalism. Since I'm in Europe right now, I figure it's time for another reminder, says JSON-based man. If we all just consumed less, and then Batman slaps him and says, fucking build something. 10K likes. People, this resonates with people.
I think I put this in because at Hereticon, the thing that triggered the most people was the decelerationist who was saying, like, we need to, like, stop building and put a bunch of stuff in the atmosphere to, like, you know. But yeah.
Well, he's kind of building something too.
It's like, awesome that this is now the dominant thought on X. And there, I'm sure, will be some negative externalities to that, but overall.
Yeah, Europe is struggling with the innovation. Not much.
Yeah, the craziest one, who we could overlay this, is like out of Europe's like top 100 firms, like all of them, or 95% of them, were created over 100 years ago.
Yeah, it's all like the legacy fashion brands, the car companies.
Yeah,
they're really stylish. It's interesting that there's no like, you know, dividend from that. Like, you don't hear about like, oh yeah, this guy who spent his time at LVMH like has spun out and started some like new hot brand that like grows and like runs the same playbook in the same way that like, you know, Instagram was like, wasn't the founder like an intern at Twitter, and so it was clear that like he like, you know, cut his teeth in social.
Well, that's the thing with
moved on to the next thing.
I do think it happens in fashion, but the issue with fashion is fashion's such a weird market, because you could have, there's like a brand here in LA called like Cherry, which is like seemingly really big. Like they did a partnership at F1 with like Red Bull, and like they have a ton of attention, but like they're a small business.
It's really hard to break through in this.
And so a lot of these people go work at LVMH and leave, but then they build a business that does $50 million in revenue, and you're never going to hear about it. And maybe in 100 years it'll be like iconic. It's hard to become an iconic brand,
especially if you take venture capital. You gotta own 100% of that business and make it your life's work.
Yeah.
Oh well. Let's do this.
We should do a deep dive on Laura Piana and Brunello Cucinelli.
That'd be good. Yeah. I'd like that.
And we just,
I don't really know anything about the business.
Yeah. We should only cover the beef though. And like the drama and stuff. No politics, but drama.
Business drama is good. I like business drama. There's tons of that. So Dee says, I gave AI control of my computer and asked it to solve homework 1 of Stanford discrete math class, Math 61 DM. It found the problem set, downloaded LaTeX, solved every question, and compiled it into a PDF in 5 minutes. Will any college student ever do homework again? Why'd you like this?
So I like this because it validated a bet that I'm planning to make in the edtech space around generative AI. And the core thesis of the bet is that Gen AI and LLMs have completely disrupted all the primary learning modalities that we have, which are tests, essays, and homework. Those are like the core things that you do in education as a middle school, high school, college student. And it's clear that they have massive potential for learning, like creating learning products and having a learning experience where we can go to Notebook LLM and say, like, generate me a conversation about the wealth of nations as though I've read it 500 times. Like, get into the real meat of it, because I already know what it's all about. But yeah, I just think it's like fascinating how a technology has so much potential and is simultaneously like so disruptive, where imagine a college student today is taking a test on some like esoteric book and they're like, okay, they like hit a point where they're like, oh, I don't know what to say anymore. I don't know this point. And they can go to the bathroom and be like, ChatGPT, like, how would you compare like this book to this book, and what would you take away from it? And it comes up with this like brilliant thought that the college student didn't have themselves, and they go back in the classroom and like finish the essay. So it's sort of just an extension of everything that happened with like people's fears around Google. It's like, well, if people can just Google the answer. Like, I remember being in like high school, having my dad's math class and being like trying to Google the answer to a math problem, and you remember there'd be like these like forums and stuff like that, and like
Google was like very much for like knowledge, and LLMs are
for solving
intelligence.
Intelligence as a
knowledge
service.
And intelligence, two very different directions, right? But like no one needs to like memorize facts anymore, or even
But yeah, that was in the database era. it was about like, oh, you don't need to memorize facts. Now it's like, you don't need to think.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was interviewing Tyler Cowen and talking to him about how AI has changed like his teaching because he's a professor, and he says that now, to your point, like all of the existing measurement tools are just completely pointless. So who gets the good grade in his class is the student that teaches him the most, which is a complete inversion of the normal professor-student relationship. Normally it's the professor teaches everything and the student who learns the most gets the good grade. Now it's the opposite. The student needs to come in and teach the professor something novel and interesting, and then they get a good grade, which I think is awesome. And I think that's actually like a bull case for wanting to go to George Mason and study under Tyler Cowen.
Totally.
Very interesting. I think that, it might be like, overrated in the short term and underrated in the long term to still go into a highly intellectual sparring zone, even if a lot of the traditional measurement tools are irrelevant. Just being on the path of like having those intellectual conversations is still valuable, even if you're not, even if you don't come away with like a test score. But I mean, HBS
Tyler
is like,
being at Hereticon Miami 2024 at the Faena, at the pool with Tyler Cowen before our talk. Drinking out of a raw coconut will be a core memory.
Exactly.
Something that the LLM of me will be telling my long descendants, like Jordy did that. He was there. He drank the coconut.
It's great. Let's close on our final tweet out of the stack of 75 tweets. Trunk fan, prolific poster, posts breaking: the new Call of Duty Black Ops 6 has released its first integration with Excel and PowerPoint, an important first step to unlock synergies for Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Obviously just like a hilarious shit post of like Excel like poorly screenshotted or photoshopped on top of some COD gameplay, but very, very funny that these are both like highly addictive products. We talked about this, how like the dudes I knew some baseball players in college at UCLA. I didn't go there, but I knew them. They went there, and they would take Adderall when the new Call of Duty came out because they wanted to be able to hit prestige like before everyone else. And so they would just stay up for 3 days straight when the game came out and like max it. And now like 10 years later they're taking Adderall to like work in Excel, and they're still using Microsoft software the whole time. It's all Microsoft.
All the way through.
It's all Microsoft. But you heard an ad on Rogan or something for them?
I think it's an argument that Microsoft is like a 360 degree lifestyle brand, almost
360 degree
almost
no
like,
scope.
360 no scope. No, it's like it's up there with Amon for me because I can go, I can play Call of Duty, I can get on my ThinkPad, I can do Excel, I could be using Excel and playing Call of Duty on my ThinkPad at the same time.
Fantastic.
Or even on 2 ThinkPads at the same time, right?
There you go.
But yeah, it was cool to see Activision, Microsoft advertising Call of Duty on Joe Rogan. It's one of those things like advertising a product to your exact user base. It's almost like sending like an email like blast because like every single person on Joe Rogan plays Call of Duty actively. But yeah, I think this goes back to like talking about Roblox the other week and like being like, if you're Activision, like looking at Roblox with that many users not making money, like I've never heard a Roblox ad. Would they be making more money if they were advertising to me? Like it's possible. I've got money to spend on Roblox if you just talk to me about the right games. So
I want to play the new Call of Duty so badly, but I have no time. It's just not going to happen.
I know.
I know that this is one I'm just going to miss.
It's awesome that I still want to play it, even though I don't.
I want to play it so badly, but oh well. Moving on. Let's do listener Q&A. This is a new segment for the podcast. We have our first call-in or email from a friend of the show. So Steven writes in, I'm not gonna say his last name. Hi, John and Jordy. I recently had a 9-figure liquidity event and I'm in the market for a new car. And I'm wondering what you would advise me to buy between the McLaren W1, the Ferrari F80, and the Porsche Mission X. So this is kind of like the new Holy Trinity. Are you familiar with the original Holy Trinity? So like back in like the 2010s, there was the LaFerrari, the McLaren P1, and the Porsche 918 Spyder. And the 3 supercars, the 918 was $850,000 at launch. The LaFerrari was 1.4 million. The P1 was over $1 million. They all had 900 horsepower. Some controversial features, 918 was hybrid, and so, but owning three of those cars, like, it was a really interesting collection, because usually people just collect like in one brand, but people started collecting across them, and kind of all three of those brands, like, it was like a rising tide situation. But we're on the cusp of a new one, because McLaren, I think like a month ago, announced the W1.
Yep.
But they've announced like a bunch of other special cars in between, so like the Senna and some other ones. And then Ferrari launched the F80, and they're back on like the numbered track. It was like F40, F50, Enzo, LaFerrari, which would have been the 60 and 70th anniversary, and now they're back on the F80. It's a $4 million car.
Yep.
V6 hybrid.
Yeah.
Controversial but beautiful. And then there's the Porsche Mission X, which is all electric.
Yep.
Which is also super controversial, because I think orders have been a little bit weak, because a lot of the Porsche fans, they like the Carrera GT. They like a really manual, really engaging, naturally aspirated V10 or something like that. But what would you go with between the three if you'd had to just pick one?
Well, to answer Steven's question, 9-figure exit. The right answer is buy two of each car, put three, total into storage.
Yeah, keep them in the plastic.
Keep them wrapped. Drive the other ones daily. Put 30, 40,000 miles on them, however much you drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to answer that question without more context. I think that if he's looking at it as, the guy clearly likes making money, if he wanted to buy a car, drive it, and basically get paid for owning it, you have to look in the last generation. LaFerrari is an incredible buy in that $3 to $5 million range. I think that the F80 coming out only makes the LaFerrari more valuable.
Yep.
I think that there's a lot of issues with the Ferrari brand right now. Like, if they're making some very questionable decisions, which I feel like I can comment on as a I recently sold my Ferrari, but as a real enthusiast and consumer of the brand. But the interesting decision right now is they made their family SUV
Pura Sangue, pure blood,
and then they
that
made
has the V12
F80 the family car as a naturally aspirated V12, similar engine to mine, and then the F80 sounds like when it's on track running hard, sounds like my Roomba. Like, it sounds like a Roomba going on in the other room. And so it's just like, I don't know if it's European regulatory bodies, because these manufacturers are over there like putting this intense pressure on to be like, nerf your cars, like make them quieter, make them, and they're going to argue like, oh, it actually has more
emissions,
power. And so with the F80, it is an award-winning, system, right? They went and they won Le Mans with it.
Le Mans derived.
And like, that's awesome. But I just think that they're clearly going, all the big Ferrari launches that I've seen recently, like the 12 Cylindri got a ton of hate.
I thought that was a beautiful car.
Really?
I think it's beautiful. I don't like the front engine, but I just think the design language is fantastic, and they took a lot of that design language over into the F80. I think it's a little controversial, but I think over time people are going to warm up on it, and it'll be beautiful. And like the black front end is so weird, but it's interesting, and I think it'll work.
Yeah, I think a lot of these cars too, when they announce them, they're spec'd in like a very distinct way, and if you spec them differently, they'll just look dramatically different. Like, I didn't like the 12 Cylindri, like the way some of the color blocking was. But if you did it in like a black,
you could do it all black.
It would probably look like really
I think
cool.
They won't sell you that, actually. Like, or there's something like they won't sell it without the two-tone. Like, they want the two-tone. They want to enforce that in their design language. Interestingly, but so Jordy's pick is get six, get two of each. I think mine would be wild card. Go for ignore the Holy Trinity and get the AMG 1.
Oh yeah,
because the AMG 1, look, it's a turbo hybrid V6 or whatever, but it's an F1 derived V6, so it's actually a smaller engine. It's 1.6 liter, but at least you can say, it's an F1 car for the road, and it's not.
It's
this
probably
like
the most
step.
collectible it could easily be the most collectible out of the.
I think so. I mean, they don't do that many supercars, whereas McLaren, they every few years they're coming out with a Speedtail. That was a really special one. But then it's like the Senna is also really special.
And the Porsche one is gonna, if it follows the Taycan Turbo S path, it will be worth half the price in literally a year.
I mean, that's the real flex.
Like, even if you don't drive it.
Yeah, if you can just buy a new Taycan every year, take $80K in depreciation, everyone will know.
That's
wow,
part of
really
that's part of Porsche's like effectively like their scam operation is that they're like, oh, you want to buy the GT3 RS? Like buy 3 Taycans.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like you can pay $100 over MSRP, or you can buy 3 Taycans.
I just love the AMG one because it's this. I mean, it's destroying Nürburgring records. Like, I don't think any of these new Holy Trinity will come close. I think the Mission X will wind up being too heavy.
I would respect Ferrari a lot more if it was actually like the fastest car.
If it sets some sort of record, if it sets some sort of record, they need to do something. There's a new car. Isn't the new C8 Corvette the ZR1 setting like a speed record? They went like 230 something with it, or it's the fastest American-made car. And the sick thing is in the video of them doing the speed test, the guy driving it is like the CEO of the company, or like the.
No, I think you're talking about the Ford. Are you talking about the new Ford GT?
No. This is the Corvette ZR1.
Yeah. I think we're gonna see an American car renaissance.
I hope so.
Because it seems like the American CEOs are locked in driving their actual cars.
Yep. Well, kind of. The Ford CEO was caught driving like a Chinese car. Did you see this? And he's like, "This is the most amazing thing."
Oh, maybe I saw the like PR response to that of him getting out of the new Ford Mustang GT car that looks like it's gonna be pretty cool.
All these guys just need to start tweeting and going direct.
I'm concerned.
The beauty of the AMG one is that like you can just tell people, I just drive a Mercedes, and they'll be like, oh, you probably have like a Metris or a G-Wagon.
Yeah.
And little do they know you're driving like a limited production multi-million-dollar car.
Yeah.
You got to daily it, obviously.
Yeah.
With it has active DRS, so you can like change.
That's the thing to respect most about Sam Altman is that he dailies hypercars,
full sends
hypercars.
That's the most important reason to get him equity in OpenAI. Because we're going to see a renaissance in San Francisco. The new car guy. More hypercars, street parked.
Yeah.
This is the way.
The techno elite.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.